On the other side, Bai Zai suddenly slammed his hands on the ground. Boom! The earth cracked. His whole body collided with the giant axe. Bang! The giant axe was instantly knocked away by Bai Zai, but there was a bloody wound on his chest. His physical body was similar to Yi Xian's. They were both extremely strong, but they weren't invincible. After knocking away the giant axe, Bai Zai wiped off the blood on his chest, then directly rushed towards the silver-armored man and the others. But in the next moment, his whole body was directly sent flying. Without the restriction of the axe, Yi Xian had already rushed in front of the longbow-wielding man. As soon as he arrived, 3 arrows were connected from head to tail and aimed straight at the center of Yi Xian's brows. The arrows were very fast and very powerful. A savage smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth, and he suddenly slashed forward with the spirit-elegant sword in both hands. Chi! The sword fell, and the 3 arrows shattered with a bang. The longbow-wielding man was about to retreat when the spirit-elegant sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew out. Chi! The longbow-wielding man had just floated half a step when his head was sent flying. Blood spurted out like a fountain. After the longbow-wielding man was sent flying, the spirit-elegant sword suddenly slashed downwards. Below, the silver-armored man and the others who were about to pursue Bai Zai suddenly had a change of expression. They raised their heads and saw a sword slashing straight at them like a bolt of lightning from the heavens. Not daring to be careless, the fat man beside the silver-armored man suddenly slashed forward with the giant axe. With this slash, the axe instantly tore through the air with a sharp explosion. At the same time, the axe directly struck the tip of the spirit-elegant sword. Bang! The giant axe and the spirit-elegant sword shook violently, and in the next moment, the giant axe directly cracked and shattered. The spirit-elegant sword paused for a moment, then the sword pierced straight at the fat man. The fat man's pupils constricted, and his eyes were filled with horror. At this moment, a leg suddenly kicked the spirit-elegant sword. Bang! The spirit-elegant sword was kicked askew and changed its direction. At this moment, a figure descended from the sky and smashed a fist towards the fat man. This figure was Yi Xian, who had just descended. A wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through the fat man's eyes. He didn't dodge, and he similarly smashed his fist towards Yi Xian instead. The silver-armored man was horrified when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly said, "Watch out." As soon as he finished speaking. Crack! The sound of bones breaking resounded abruptly, and then the fat man's entire arm exploded apart, causing blood and flesh to spray into the surroundings. The fat man was horrified in his heart, and he was just about to retreat explosively when a flying sword suddenly pierced through the center of his forehead. Hiss! A strand of fresh blood sprayed out from the back of the fat man's head. On the other hand, the fat man's figure stiffened completely, and then he fell to the ground. At the moment the flying sword entered the center of the fat man's forehead, a spear suddenly arrived in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly pressed his palms together and held the spear together. A wisp of a ferocious expression arose on the corners of the man's mouth, and then he suddenly spun the spear forward. Hiss! The tip of the spear directly pierced half an inch into Yi Xian's chest. At the same time, a leg suddenly swept towards Yang Ye's head. He was attacked from both front and back. Yi Xian didn't dare act carelessly. He tapped his right foot lightly on the ground and was just about to activate the armor of earth. However, right at this moment, an afterimage suddenly appeared by his side, and then a ray of cold light slashed towards that leg at an extremely swift speed. Bang! The silver-armored man was blasted over 10 m back. He stared fixedly at a woman who'd appeared by Yi Xian's side. It was Jianji. Jianji glanced at Yi Xian with a rather unnatural expression on her face. "You ate too much." As she spoke, she suddenly stretched out her right hand that was hidden behind her back towards Yi Xian, and there was a golden chicken drumstick in her hand. "For you." Yi Xian was speechless. When Jianji saw that Yi Xian hadn't taken it, she immediately took a bite, and then she turned around to gaze at Mo Yinchi. At this moment, Mo Yinchi was flashing about repeatedly, and he was in a very sorry state. Ji Anji spoke softly, "I'll go help him." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure vanished on the spot. Yi Xian glanced at Ji Anji, who was gnawing on the drumstick, and then he shook his head and sighed, "What a glutton." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around to gaze at the silver-armored man, Dai. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. On the other side, Jian Xiaowang, who sat on a rock, glanced at Yi Xian. "That fellow is really good at fighting." Gong Qingqing smiled as he stood not too far away from Jian Xiaowang. "Indeed. I just wonder if he has any trump cards." As he spoke, he glanced at the man who stood on a log that was over 100 m away. The man just stood there and had no intention to attack. Jian Xiaowang glanced at the man on the log and did not say anything. By Gong Qingqing's side, Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian's group of 4 who were being besieged. Her fists were clenched tightly, and her expression was icy cold. No one knew what she was thinking. In the distance, Yi Xian's speed was extremely swift, and he instantly arrived before the silver-armored man. At this moment, the silver-armored man retreated repeatedly, and at the same time, he kicked repeatedly with his right leg. Every single kick would cause a sharp gust of wind to slash at Yi Xian. However, the gust of wind couldn't stop Yi Xian. Every time Yi Xian swung the exquisite sword in his hand, it would easily slash apart the gust of wind. When he was still 6 m away from the silver-armored man, the exquisite sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly transformed into a ray of sword light that shot out. A flying sword. The silver-armored man's expression changed drastically when he saw this scene. At this moment, a spear suddenly shot over from the right, and the spear stabbed the body of the exquisite sword. Bang! The exquisite sword was forced to a stop. Yi Xian turned around, and on his right was the spear-wielding man who attacked him earlier. Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the exquisite sword flew back into his hand. In the next moment, he stomped his right foot on the ground. Bang! The ground cracked. On the other hand, he made use of the force from the ground to vanish on the spot with a swish. In the distance, the spear-wielding man's pupils constricted. He didn't dodge, and he stabbed his spear forward instead. With this stab, a sharp spear aura instantly enveloped Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. A single strike to decide life and death. Hum! A sword hum tore through the battlefield. In the blink of an eye. Hiss! The spear in the spear-wielding man's hand split from the middle, and Yi Xian was already over 10 m behind the spear-wielding man. The spear-wielding man looked towards the distance in a daze. What a powerful strike! As soon as he finished speaking, the space between his brows split open, and a strand of blood sprayed out. Yi Xian turned around to look at the nearby silver-armored man, and the silver-armored man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "I'll withdraw." Withdraw. At this moment, he was slightly afraid. Not only did Yi Xian have help, his own strength was even stronger than he'd imagined. The joint attack of the 3 of them was actually unable to do anything to Yi Xian. Now that he was all alone, and he was extremely exhausted and even injured, he naturally had to choose to withdraw at this moment. Withdraw? Yi Xian glanced indifferently at the silver-armored man. "Isn't it too late?" The silver-armored man said coldly, "Yi Xian, I'm the 3rd prince of the Chu kingdom. If you kill me, then my Chu kingdom's imperial family will definitely not let you off. You." Right at this moment, a flying sword flashed through the battlefield. Hiss! A sword directly pierced through the center of the silver-armored man's brows. The silver-armored man's figure stiffened, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Yi Xian walked over to the silver-armored man, and then he glanced at the silver-armored man. The imperial family of the Chu kingdom? Fuck the imperial family of the Chu kingdom. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed horizontally with his sword. Hiss! The silver-armored man's head instantly flew into the air. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Many readers have asked me why I've been updating at midnight lately. I'll answer them. The times are changing. If I were to update twice a day like I did back when I was in the sword domain, then I would definitely be abandoned by the readers. I must change. Change myself. I want to pursue something. I want to break through. Actually, all of that is nonsense. The true reason is that I'm building a house for a poor family, and I want to earn more money. Chapter 95. Yi Xian walked in front of the silver-armored man's corpse. With a wave of his right hand, the silver armor on the silver-armored man flew into his hand. At the same time, the ring on the silver-armored man's finger flew into his hand as well. Without looking closely, he threw the two items into the prison pagoda. Then, he turned to look at Mo Yunqi and the other two who were surrounded. He was about to make a move, but at this moment, the man on the log suddenly disappeared several dozen feet away. Yi Xian suddenly turned around. At this moment, the man had already appeared in front of him. The man pointed at the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows with his fingers. Extremely fast. Yi Xian held his sword and made a vertical slash. Just as the sword was about to cut the man's fingers, two of the man's fingers suddenly separated and clamped. With this clamp, he forcefully caught Yi Xian's sword. The man's fingers trembled lightly. Bang! Yi Xian and his sword were sent flying dozens of feet away. The moment he stopped, the man suddenly leaped in front of Yi Xian and slammed his palm towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian stepped back with his left foot, then, he raised his sword and stabbed forward. This stab stabbed directly into the man's palm. The moment the sword technique came into contact with the man's palm, the man's hand suddenly dodged the sword at a strange angle. Then, his palm moved down along the Lingxiu sword and slammed onto Yi Xian's chest. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated 50 to 60 feet. The moment he stopped, a smear of blood slowly flowed from the corner of his mouth. As soon as he stopped, a black shadow quietly emerged from the shadow behind him. The next second, a beam of cold light pierced into Yi Xian's back. Qi! A stream of blood splattered out from Yi Xian's back. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Bang! An afterimage was sent flying, but very quickly, the afterimage disappeared silently. The moment the afterimage disappeared, Yi Xian's pupils abruptly constricted, and the Lingxiu sword in his hand suddenly flew backward. Behind Yi Xian, who was his shadow, another person had appeared out of nowhere. Bang! Qi! Yi Xian retreated rapidly, and at his abdomen, a wound had opened up unknowingly, and fresh blood was flowing out. In the distance, beside Gan a black shadow appeared and disappeared from time to time. The one who attacked repeatedly just now was this black shadow. That guy is from Dark World. At this time, not far behind Yi Xian, Jian Shaowang suddenly said, "These fellows are all assassins, very disgusting." Yi Xian wiped his abdomen. His palm was instantly dyed red. Yi Xian's face sank when he witnessed this scene, and he raised his head to look at the two figures in the distance. But right at this moment, both of them vanished at the same time. There was enmity between the two of them. They were not on the same side. They had obviously attacked because they wanted to take Yi Xian's head first. Yi Xian bit the Lingxiu sword in his mouth and tore off his clothes to wrap around his abdomen. At this moment, both of them had arrived before him. Yi Xian held the Lingxiu sword and was about to attack when a cold gleam suddenly slashed from Yi Xian's right. The cold gleam wasn't targeted at him, but at the two people in front of him. Bang! The shadow in front of Yi Xian was forced to stop by the cold gleam, and Gan Shisan stopped as well. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared beside Yi Xian. Yi Xian was instantly stunned when he saw who it was. Ninth Princess. Jiang Zhou. Yi Xian looked at Jiang Zhou in astonishment. Little Zhou, why are you here? Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian indifferently. Can't I come? Yi Xian shook his head and was about to say something when Jiang Jiu suddenly said, cut the crap and hurry up and fight. As soon as she finished speaking, she charged towards the shadow. Moreover, the shadow suddenly vanished, and it was behind Jiang Jiu when it appeared again. Jiang Jiu's reaction was extremely swift, and she turned around and slashed repeatedly. Bang! 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 Numerous explosions resounded incessantly. Yi Xian was relieved when he saw Jiang Jiu had the strength to fight the shadow. He turned around to look at Gongshi San, and he didn't waste his breath at all. He suddenly vanished on the spot. OM. A sword howl tore through the surroundings. Gongshi San's face was emotionless. He tapped his right foot lightly, and then he vanished on the spot. Bang! Along with a huge bang, Yi Xian and Gongshi San returned to their original positions. The sword in Yi Xian's hand was trembling violently, and a wisp of blood was slowly seeping out from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Gongshi San glanced at his palm, and there was a trace of blood at the center of his palm. A trace of seriousness appeared in Gongshi San's eyes as he gazed at the blood. Because Yi Xian was only at the Ascension realm, and it was a realm lower than him. He himself was someone who could surmount his realm to do battle, yet now, someone was actually capable of surmounting his realm to do so. Gongshi San raised his head to look at Yi Xian who stood nearby. No wonder they paid such a price to eliminate you. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly vanished on the spot. An afterimage flashed in the surroundings. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils constricted slightly. In the next moment, he held Spirit Grace with both hands and swiftly slashed forward. A dazzling ray of light surged out from within Spirit Grace. Meanwhile, Gongshi San's finger tapped the tip of Spirit Grace. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! Spirit Grace shook violently, and then Yi Xian was blasted backward explosively. However, Gongshi San actually didn't take even half a step back. Gongshi San suddenly soared into the sky, and in the next moment, he slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, his entire right arm shook violently as a powerful force converged towards his arm from all directions. In midair, Gongshi San pointed diagonally towards the ground, and a strand of cold light suddenly appeared on his fingertip. Heaven rank martial technique. Watch out. Right at this moment, Jiang Jiu's voice suddenly resounded from afar. Heaven rank martial technique. Yi Xian raised his head to look at Gongshi San. This was the first time he'd seen a heaven rank martial technique. In midair, a shapeless pressure pressed down towards him like tidewater. Merely this aura was suffocating. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He knew that the person before him was about to reveal his trump card. He couldn't continue hiding it. Yi Xian opened his palm, and Spirit Grace silently appeared. In next to no time, Spirit Grace started trembling violently, and numerous sword howls resounded incessantly from within it. In the distance, Jian Xiaowang stared fixedly at Yi Xian who stood nearby. This fellow still has a trump card. Gong Qingqing grinned, what a joke. How could an ordinary person catch the eye of Enlanxiu? Jian Xiaowang gazed at Gong Qingqing, what's her ranking on the martial rankings now? Gong Qingqing spoke indifferently, when she left the Great Cloud Empire, she defeated that fellow who was ranked third on the martial rankings with 3 moves. The corners of Jian Xiaowang's mouth twitched. That woman, Yi Ling, stared fixedly at Yi Xian who stood in the distance, and she clenched her fists tightly. Besides deep worry, there was also indifference and rage in her eyes. Meanwhile, Jian Xiaowang and Gong Qingqing suddenly turned to look at Gongshi San and Yi Xian who stood nearby. In midair, Gongshi San suddenly opened his eyes, and in the next moment, he suddenly pointed at Yi Xian, finger of heaven and earth. As soon as his finger descended, a strand of overbearing energy suddenly surged out from the tip of Gongshi San's finger. At the same time, an enormous illusory finger that was over 30 m long descended forcefully towards Yi Xian. Moreover, this enormous energy contained an extremely formidable force. It was like a volcano that had been accumulating strength for over 1,000 years had suddenly erupted. Not only was it extremely overbearing, but it even caused the ground beneath Yi Xian's feet to collapse inch by inch. On the other hand, some of the cultivators that were comparatively closer to Yi Xian and Ganshi San were instantly blasted flying by the might of this force. The might of a single finger was so terrifying. As the target of that force, Yi Xian's breathing had stopped at this moment. He couldn't breathe at all. A heaven-rank martial technique contained the might of the heavens and the earth. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, the sword in his hand shook violently, and then it instantly transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky. The sword contained a peerlessly overbearing aura, and it wasn't just that, it even emanated a strand of sword intent. Sword intent. Seeing this, Jian Shaowang suddenly stood up and stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Sword intent, this sword intent is so faint that it doesn't seem to exist at all. What kind of sword intent is this? Beside Jian Shaowang, Gong Qingqing looked at Yi Xian from afar with a smile. He isn't the great swordsman at all, but a sword Dao grandmaster. A sword Dao grandmaster who isn't even 20 years old is rare even in the Great Cloud Empire. In the distance, Yi Xian's spirit elegant sword shot into the sky. This sword emitted boundless sword aura and sword ray. This sword pierced through the sky. In the sky, when the sword pierced the enormous illusory finger, boom! A deafening explosion suddenly resounded in the sky. In the next moment, the enormous finger shattered with a loud bang, and countless energy fragments and sword rays shot out in all directions. In the surroundings, the people who were besieging Mo Yunqi and the other two retreated rapidly to avoid the energy fragments and sword rays. In the sky, when Spirit Elegant sword pierced through the enormous illusory finger, it pierced through and arrived in front of Ganshi San. Ganshi San narrowed his eyes. He stretched out his hand and clasped Spirit Elegant sword again. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared behind the Lingxiu sword. He grabbed the Lingxiu sword and then spun it forward. A sword to determine life and death. This sword contained sword intent, a sword to determine life and death. When this sword was unleashed, two of Ganshi San's fingers were severed, and in the blink of an eye, the sword pierced towards Ganshi San's chest. At this moment, Ganshi San mysteriously vanished on the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already over 30 meters away. Teleportation. However, as soon as Ganshi San stopped, a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Not only that, but his face instantly turned pale. Obviously, he had paid a terrible price for that teleportation just now. Yi Xian looked at Ganshi San, who was in the distance. He was about to attack again when a white-robed elder suddenly appeared in front of Ganshi San. The white-robed elder looked coldly at Yi Xian. Scram! At this moment, an elder suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. It was Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine and was about to speak when Yi Xian had already charged towards Ganshi San. Old Man Ji, in the distance, the white-robed elder narrowed his eyes, and the killing intent in his eyes was almost tangible. You're courting death. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. But at this moment, a powerful pressure enveloped him. The white-robed elder was shocked. He turned to look at Old Man Ji and said in astonishment, "Peak of Myriad Technique Realm." Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound came from afar. The white-robed elder suddenly turned to look. Ganshi San had just crashed to the ground, and at this moment, Yi Xian descended in front of Ganshi San and pressed his sword against the space between Ganshi San's brows. The white-robed elder stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "If you touch him in the slightest, my Akagami Academy will..." Right at this moment, Yi Xian held his sword and slashed horizontally. Chi! Ganshi San's head instantly flew into the air. Yi Xian kicked Ganshi San's head. Bang! The bloody head instantly exploded. The sword was withdrawn. Chapter 96. Let Gan-Shur-San go? Yi Xian had never thought of that. These people were used to being superior. If he let Gan-Shur-San go, not only would they not be grateful, but they would also think it was what he should do. Moreover, if he let Gan-Shur-San go, it was very likely that Gan-Shur-San would continue to seek revenge after he went back to cultivate. Naturally, he would not do such a stupid thing. Moreover, he would never place his hopes of survival on someone else. Since you came to mess with me, then I will naturally kill you. I don't care who's behind you. I'll kill you first. Seeing that Yi Xian killed Gan-Shur-San, the white-robed old man's face suddenly turned extremely ugly. He stared at Yi Xian as if he wanted to eat Yi Xian alive. Gan-Shur-San. He was the top genius of the inner court of Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki College. The entire Kuraki College had high hopes for him. Moreover, Gan-Shur-San was his student, which was equivalent to his personal disciple. But now, he was killed by Yi Xian in front of him. The white-robed old man was about to make a move when old Ji suddenly punched the white-robed old man from afar. The punch was firm and fierce. The space around the white-robed old man twisted, and in the next moment, bang! The white-robed old man was sent flying dozens of feet away. The white-robed old man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked up at the drunken old Ji not far away with a trace of disbelief in his eyes. Although he was not at the peak of the Dharma realm, he was still in the Dharma realm. However, he was almost powerless in front of old Ji. He could not beat him at all. The white-robed old man finally came to this conclusion. However, he was not afraid at all because behind him was the Kuraki College of Great Cloud Empire. Although Kuraki Academy wasn't the headquarters of Great Cloud Empire, it was the best academy in Qingzhou Province and one of the most powerful forces in Qingzhou Province. He was confident. It should be said that he was very confident. The white-robed old man glanced coldly at old Ji. Just you wait. With that, he turned to look at Yi Xian not far away. You bastard, let's see who can protect you in the future. After speaking, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. Old man Ji glanced at the place where the white-robed old man disappeared with a calm expression and did not say anything. He glanced at Yi Xian below. Don't hurt yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure trembled and he disappeared on the spot. After old man Ji left, Yi Xian turned to look at Jiangjiu, who wasn't too far away. Jiangjiu's face had a deep knife wound, and her abdomen had been dyed red with blood. Yi Xian tightened his grip on the spirit elegance sword in his right hand. He looked opposite Jiangjiu. There, a ghostly shadow suddenly floated backward. You want to run? Seeing this, Yi Xian suddenly roared, Die. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body floated out. At the same time, the exquisite sword in his hands suddenly slashed out. The speed of the exquisite sword was extremely fast, and it arrived before the ghostly figure in the blink of an eye. The ghostly figure suddenly disappeared on the spot, and the exquisite sword missed. At this moment, the shadow behind Yi Xian suddenly wriggled, and in the blink of an eye, a cold gleam was aimed at the back of Yi Xian's neck. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. His reaction was extremely fast, and his body leaned forward, dodging the cold gleam. At the same time, the exquisite sword suddenly flew over from afar. Behind Yi Xian, the ghostly figure quietly disappeared and floated backward. At this moment, a golden flying knife suddenly appeared behind the ghostly figure without any warning. The ghostly figure's figure trembled, and it immediately became illusory. When it appeared again, it was already over 100 feet to the right. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Yi Xian and the rest turned solemn. What a strange movement technique. Mo Yunqi also had a solemn expression. His speed was fast, but he was not a ghostly figure. However, the person in front of him was not only fast, but also incomparably ghostly, just like a real ghostly figure. The ghostly figure's body gradually became illusory. Obviously, it wanted to escape. At this moment, the nearby exquisite sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew out. This strike was infused with sword intent. This sword was incomparably fast. In the distance, the ghostly figure suddenly stopped, and the dagger in his hand pressed firmly against Yi Xian's exquisite sword. As for himself, he was pushed back explosively by the force contained within the sword. Seeing this scene, the corners of Mo Yinqi's mouth curled up slightly. In the next moment, his figure trembled, and he vanished on the spot. At the same time, two cold gleams silently appeared on the left and right of the ghostly figure. Flying knives. The ghostly figure wielded a dagger and slashed repeatedly. Bang! The two flying knives were instantly slashed away. At this moment, a strand of sword light suddenly pierced through the middle of the ghostly figure's body. Hiss! The ghostly figure's body directly stiffened on the spot. In the next moment, the ghostly figure's body gradually became illusory. At this moment, a drop of blood suddenly flew into Yi Xian's chest from the ghostly figure's illusory body. Yi Xian looked at his chest, and there was a red dot on his chest. This is... Yi Xian frowned. Nearby, Jian Shaowang suddenly said, "The Blood Soul Hunting Order is a life and death mark of the Dark World. From now on, you are the mortal enemy of the Dark World, and there will be countless assassins coming to kill you." Yi Xian nodded. "You're here for revenge, right?" Jian Shaowang glanced at Yi Xian. "Perhaps you don't know how terrifying the Dark World is. You won't be able to handle it." Yi Xian spread out his hands. "Then what should I do? If he wants to kill me, do I have to be killed by him?" Jian Shaowang. Yi Xian shook his head. "They want to kill me, I kill them, and then they will come to take revenge on me. It's so damn hard to be a human." As he spoke, he turned and looked towards the distance. There were 8 or 9 people there, and they were the people who had besieged Mo Yinqi and the others. When they saw Yi Xian look over, their expressions changed drastically, and they were about to flee. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Fucking kill them all. Since we have enough enemies, let's make more." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Mo Yinqi and the others followed closely behind him. Mo Yinqi and the others were really angry because they had almost died a few times just now. Without the silver-armored man, Gongshi San, and the assassin from the Dark World, although the remaining people were monstrous geniuses, they weren't a match for Yi Xian and the others. Slaughter. Jian Shaowang glanced at Yi Xian and the others. "This fellow is going to offend all the powers." Gong Qingqing spoke indifferently. "Even if he doesn't kill them, he will still offend them. To put it simply, if the people behind him are weak, then the powers behind them will be his enemies. If he is strong, then not only will the powers behind them not dare to do anything, they will even apologize to him obediently." As he spoke, he glanced at Jian Shaowang. "For example, if he has the Jian family as his backing, then would these people dare to take revenge on him?" Jian Shaowang spoke coldly. "I know what you're going to say. Don't worry, I will fight him one-on-one. If I really can't win, then I'll flee. I won't fight to the death." Gong Qingqing smiled lightly. "I just don't want you to be used by others." Jian Shaowang glanced at the sky and didn't speak. He wasn't stupid, and he naturally knew that this was a trap set up by someone against Yi Xian. However, since they were already here, it wouldn't make sense for them to leave without a fight. In the distance, the battle was coming to an end. A few breaths of time later, only a man remained before Yi Xian and the others. The man's right arm had been chopped off, but he didn't flee because he couldn't. He wasn't as fast as Yi Xian's sword, and he wasn't as fast as Mo Yinqi. The one-armed man stared at Yi Xian, who was not far away. "Do you know who you killed?" Yi Xian shook his head. The one-armed man laughed sinisterly. "You killed people from the famous forces in Qingzhou. Now that you've killed them, those forces won't let you off. Don't worry, I'll wait for you down there." "You, Qi." A sword suddenly pierced through the one-armed man's forehead. The one-armed man's body stiffened. Yi Xian walked in front of the one-armed man. "You talk too much nonsense. As he spoke, he pulled out the spirit elegant sword. Chi! Blood spurted out from the one-armed man's forehead. Yi Xian held the Lingxiu sword in his hand as he turned around and walked towards Mo Yunqi and the rest. Mo Yunqi and the rest had injuries of various sizes on their bodies, especially Bai Zai. There were too many injuries on his body, and there was even a deep wound on his chest. Even the bones inside could be seen clearly. Apart from that, his right arm was directly dislocated from his shoulder. His injuries were very serious. Yi Xian walked in front of Bai Zai and took out his golden sword pill. At this moment, Bai Zai shook his head, no need. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Bai Zai explained, I cultivate my physical body, so I need to be beaten. The more I get beaten, the stronger my body will be in the future. Not far away, Mo Yunqi chuckled, beaten? I can help you then. Bai Zai glared at Mo Yunqi, and the latter hurriedly took 2 steps back. At this moment, Yi Xian took out the silver armor that he had used to kill the silver-armored man. This silver armor was a low-grade light-rank armor. Although it was cracked by his sword, if it was repaired, it could be said to be invaluable. Yi Xian handed the silver armor to Bai Zai. This thing is not bad. You can keep it to protect yourself. Bai Zai could naturally see the value of this silver armor. He smiled bitterly, if I wear this, then what's the point of cultivating my physical body? I really don't need it, I'll use it. At this moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly took the silver armor from Yi Xian. I don't cultivate my physical body, I can use it. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and smiled wickedly, Brother Yi, give this to me. I'm afraid of death, I'm really afraid of death. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, alright, I'll give it to you. He originally wanted to give this silver armor to Mo Yunqi because Mo Yunqi's close combat ability was too weak. If someone got close to him, it would be too dangerous. As for himself, his physical body was also very strong. Moreover, he had the armor of earth as a trump card, so he did not really need this silver armor. After receiving the silver armor, Mo Yunqi smiled from ear to ear, Brother Yi, you're a good person, a very good person. Yi Xian and the others. At this moment, Yi Xian and the others suddenly turned around. Not far away from them stood an old man and a black-robed man. The old man was the dean of Kuraki Academy, Li Xuansang. Li Xuansang glanced at Yi Xian and the others and smiled, Congratulations, you've successfully killed the geniuses of dozens of super forces, ha. He laughed maniacally. Chapter 97. Although Yi Xian didn't die in this mystic realm, Li Xuansang's goal was achieved. Making enemies. How many enemies did Yi Xian and Sung Lan Academy make in this battle? Not to mention others, just Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki Academy and Dark World's assassin organization, any one of them wasn't something that Sung Lan Academy could resist. And now, Sung Lan Academy didn't just offend 1, but 2. Apart from that, there were also countless aristocratic families and some academies from other countries. Thinking of the forces that Sung Lan Academy would face next, Li Xuansang's laughter instantly became even crazier. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi glanced at Li Xuansang. I really want to beat this bastard to death. Yi Xian nodded, beat him? Mo Yunqi glared at Yi Xian, you want me to make the first move again? Yi Xian, at this moment, Li Xuansang stopped and glanced at Yi Xian and the others. Finally, his gaze landed on Yi Xian, wait for your death. With that, he and the black-robed man beside him turned and disappeared into the horizon. In the battlefield. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian glanced at the corpses on the ground not far away, collect the spoils of war. Mo Yunqi chuckled and took the lead to rush out. Spoils of war. These people weren't ordinary people, so the things they brought with them were all supreme grade. Apart from the most precious silver armor, Yi Xian also obtained nearly 7 supreme-grade spiritual weapons, among which there were 5 to 600,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, and a storage ring. Mo Yunqi and the others also gained a lot, and each of them obtained several supreme-grade spiritual weapons. Sudden riches. True sudden riches. Because a supreme-grade spiritual weapon could be sold for millions of gold coins, and now, each of them had several. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian walked in front of Jiang Jiu, took out 2 supreme-grade spiritual weapons and handed them to Jiang Jiu. For you. Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian. What are you doing? Yi Xian grinned. I can't let you come here for nothing. Jiang Jiu said coldly, am I here for these 2 supreme-grade spiritual weapons? Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Mo Yunqi, who was at the side, suddenly smiled. Bandit Yi, the 9th princess is obviously here for you, you fool. At this moment, the 9th princess suddenly disappeared. Bang! Mo Yunqi's entire body was sent flying several feet away before crashing heavily onto the ground. The 9th princess looked at Mo Yunqi, who was on the ground. You know too much. Mo Yunqi, at the side, Bai Zai gave the 9th princess a thumbs up. Good hit, great hit. You made him squeak in pain. Everyone, at that moment, Jianji suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Don't you like men? Everyone looked at Jianji. Jiang Jiu also looked at Jianji. Jianji pointed at Yi Xian. He once told me that he only likes men. Yi Xian, everyone looked at Yi Xian when they heard him. They all had an odd expression on their faces. Mo Yunqi got up and sized up Yi Xian, and he said seriously, Bandit Yi, don't tell me you really like men? What the hell, tell me, do you have any feelings for me? F***ck, let me tell you, I'm not gay. You'd better give up early. Yi Xian's face darkened. At this moment, Bai Zai, who was by his side, suddenly moved a few steps to the right. When Bai Zai looked at him, his gaze was especially strange, and there was a trace of vigilance. Yi Xian was slightly speechless. He wanted to explain, but if he did, Jianji might explode. This woman was usually a foodie, but when she got serious, she was extremely terrifying. But if he didn't explain, not far away from Yi Xian, Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of a smile in her eyes. She naturally didn't believe that Yi Xian liked men. Would a man who liked men be interested in women? But this guy before her was obviously interested in Shaoan. And that time in the waterfall pit, Jiang Jiu's face suddenly turned slightly red as she thought of certain scenes. But she quickly returned to normal. At this moment, Sword Shaowang suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Everyone looked at Sword Shaowang. Sword Shaowang sized up Yi Xian. You're injured now. Sword Shaowang, won't take advantage of you. When the time comes, I'll head to Tsanglan Academy to challenge you. Yi Xian nodded. I'll wait for you. Sword Shaowang didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Mo Yunqi, who was beside Yi Xian, glanced at Sword Shaowang. This guy isn't bad. He didn't take advantage of me earlier. He's a person with character. Yi Xian said softly. Not everyone is a vile person. As he spoke, he looked at Gong Qingqing, who was not far away. Gong Qingqing smiled. Congratulations. Yi Xian clasped his fists. Many thanks. Gong Qingqing brought Yi Ling to Yi Xian. Yi Ling walked to Yi Xian's side. She held on to Yi Xian's hand tightly, as though she was afraid that Yi Xian would disappear. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's head before looking at Gong Qingqing. Gong Qingqing smiled. Brother Yi, although you've gotten rid of the danger this time, do you know that you're going to face an even greater danger? The trouble between you and Tsanglan Academy has only just begun. Yi Xian remained silent. Gong Qingqing glanced at Yi Xian and the rest. Those who came here were carefully nurtured by some forces. Today, all of them died in your hands. Those forces will surely not let this matter rest. Especially Tsangmu Academy of Great Cloud Empire and Dark World. These two forces attach great importance to their reputation. Today, their people have died here. They will surely seek revenge. But this time, those forces won't be talking about rules with you. As he spoke, he shook his head with a smile. Simply put, now is the time to compete for backing. And now, it's not something I can intervene in. Everyone, if you have time, please come to Great Cloud Empire. If you can tide through this crisis safely, I believe that you will come to Great Cloud Empire soon. After all, that place is the real stage. Farewell. After speaking, he clasped his fists at Yi Xian and the rest before turning to leave. Mo Yinchi, who was standing beside Yi Xian, suddenly spoke. Is he trying to befriend us? Jiang Jiu spoke indifferently. If you can live well and become more outstanding, he will befriend you. But if you are an idiot, I'm afraid he won't even bother to speak a word with you. Some geniuses are extremely arrogant. They only recognize outstanding people and will only befriend outstanding people. Mo Yinchi nodded. Understood. Jiang Jiu turned to look at Yi Xian. Flee. Flee. Everyone looked at Jiang Jiu. Jiang Jiu looked straight at Yi Xian. You have to flee. If you don't flee, you won't be able to survive. Flee now and wait for the next day. Yi Xian shook his head. Jiang Jiu raged. Can't you be more flexible? There's nothing shameful about fleeing. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. If I flee, what will happen to Mo Himao and the rest? What will happen to Zhanglan Academy? Jiang Jiu remained silent. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinchi and the rest. My sister and I have no worries. We can flee anywhere. But Mo Himao and Bai Zhe are different. You have your clans. If I flee, those people will definitely find trouble with you or your clans. Speaking of this, he looked at Jiang Jiu. They might even find trouble with you. Jiang Jiu remained silent. Mo Yinchi sighed in a low voice. Bandit Yi, it's better for you to flee. As for us. Yi Xian shook his head and interrupted Mo Yinchi's words. Say no more. As he spoke, he pulled Yi Ling's hand and smiled. We are brother and sister. If we dare to do something, we dare to admit it. At this moment, Jiang Jiu suddenly said, actually, everyone is already in the same boat. Those people will not let little Yi go, let alone Zhanglan Academy. As she spoke, she glanced at Mo Yinchi and the other two. If the three of you are weak and an idiot, you might have a chance to survive. But the three of you are not weak and your talents are extremely strong. Those people will not let the three of you go. They will definitely kill all of you. Mo Yinchi shook his head and sighed. Being too outstanding is also a mistake. Bai Zhe glanced at Mo Yinchi. Your skin is thicker than my butt. Mo Yinchi glared at Bai Zhe. If you don't speak, no one will treat you as a mute. Bai Zhe said indifferently, I don't like the look of you. Mo Yinchi retreated a few feet and waved at Bai Zhe. Come and hit me. Bai Zhe was speechless. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He looked at Jiang Jiu and was about to speak. Just at this moment, a little girl appeared on the scene. Seeing this little girl, Yi Xian was instantly stunned. He knew this little girl. She was the little girl who gifted the heavenly fire-warm jade to Yi Ling. The little girl wore a pink cotton-padded jacket and had a long whip tied behind her head. She looked like she was carved from jade and looked very cute. Unfortunately, her eyes were too cold. The little girl ignored the surrounding people and walked in front of Yi Ling. At this moment, Mo Yinchi suddenly walked in front of the little girl. He sized up the little girl and smiled mischievously. Little girl, you are really cute. Where are your parents? As he spoke, he was about to touch the whip behind the little girl's head. Bang! Without any warning, Mo Yinchi flew out. A few dozen feet away, Mo Yinchi heavily landed on the ground and directly smashed a huge deep pit on the ground. In the deep pit, Mo Yinchi wailed. Damn it! It hurts. Everyone, the little girl looked at Yi Ling. Come with me. Hearing this, Yi Xian directly stood in front of Yi Ling. He looked at the little girl warily. The little girl coldly looked at Yi Xian. Can you protect her? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I will protect her with my life. The little girl coldly said, Is your life useful? Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but the little girl coldly said, In Great Cloud Empire's Karaki College, although there are not many Dharma realm experts, it is still easy to have 10 or 20 of them. In addition, there is also Dark World. This assassin organization has successfully assassinated experts above Dharma realm. In addition to these two forces, there are countless forces in Qingzhou. They will all come to take revenge on you. At that time, what can you protect her with? Yi Xian clenched his fists and his face was a little ugly. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly whispered, Brother, I want to go with her. Yi Xian's body slightly trembled. He turned to look at Yi Ling. In an instant, without warning, 2 lines of tears flowed down from his eyes. Begging for subscriptions, begging for tickets. Chapter 98. Everyone present here was slightly shocked and they saw Yi Xian cry, especially Jiang Jiu and the others. Especially Jiang Jiu and others. They knew Yi Xian's character very well. He was definitely a man who would bleed but not cry. However, at this moment, a single sentence from Yi Ling had caused him to cry. It was obvious how important Yi Ling was to Yi Xian. The little girl was slightly surprised as well. She knew a little about Yi Xian, and she'd watched the entire battle from before. Even though she didn't like Yi Xian, she had to admit that he was a man. Especially how he dared to fight and was fearless, and she admired him slightly. Yet at this moment, just because of a single sentence from Yi Ling, this fellow actually. She had to admit that this fellow really cared about his younger sister. This sort of care wasn't based on benefits at all. Yi Ling's tears instantly flowed down as well, and she just gazed at Yi Xian. Big brother, I want to become strong as well. Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Ling wiped away the tears on her face. I don't want to be a burden to Big Brother, nor do I want to be captured and used to threaten Big Brother. Big Brother, I want to become strong. I want to be able to help you in the future. Yi Xian walked over to Yi Ling, and he lightly wiped away the tears on Yi Ling's face. Big Brother is useless. I wasn't able to protect you properly. Yi Ling shook her head, and her tears flowed down without end. I'm useless. I've only been a burden to Big Brother since I was young. I'm useless. Yi Xian grinned. Don't cry. You've turned into a dirty cat. Yi Ling pulled Yi Xian to squat down, and she lightly wiped away the tears on Yi Xian's face. Big Brother, I'll definitely become strong. I definitely will. At that time, I'll definitely protect you properly, just like how you protect me. Yi Xian grinned. He gently wiped the tears off Yi Ling's face, not saying a word. Right at this moment, the little girl at the side suddenly said, Her physique is special. You can only temporarily maintain her life with the fire spirit. This isn't a long-term solution at all. She can only return to the frigid North sect with me to completely solve the problem with her body. Yi Xian turned around and looked at the little girl. The little girl looked straight at Yi Xian and said, You can't protect her forever. She needs to be able to protect herself. If she joins the frigid North sect, we'll do our best to train her. At this moment, Old Ji appeared next to Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Old Ji, and Old Ji glanced at Yi Ling. This girl has a special constitution. The frigid North sect will be the best place for her. Yi Xian lowered his head slightly. She has never been far from me. Old man Ji sighed softly and didn't say anything. At this moment, the little girl's voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. Have you thought about your current situation? If she stays by your side, she'll definitely die. If she joins the frigid North sect, we have the ability to protect her. I know you love her, but don't let your love turn into selfishness. Selfishness. Yi Xian slowly clenched his fists. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. After a while, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and looked at Yi Ling. He smiled and said, "Okay, I promise you." Yi Ling wasn't happy. Instead, she cried even harder. Because this meant that she would really have to leave her brother. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's head and smiled. "Don't cry." Then, he pulled Yi Ling to the little girl. "Senior, please take care of my sister." The little girl was about to hold Yi Ling's hand when Yi Xian suddenly said, "She's weak and doesn't like to fight. If she goes to the frigid North sect, she'll be bullied." Don't worry." The little girl coldly looked at Yi Xian. "If she comes with me to the frigid North sect, no one in the frigid North sect will dare to bully her." Yi Xian glanced at the little girl, then turned around and put a ring in Yi Ling's hand. This ring was the storage ring that he had seized earlier, and inside it was all his belongings. Yi Xian grinned. "Don't be too weak when you go to the frigid North sect. If anyone bullies you, bully them back. If you can't beat them, send a message to me and I'll help you. Understand?" Yi Ling wiped the tears off her face and nodded. "Okay." Then, the little girl suddenly said, "You can keep this storage ring for yourself. She doesn't need anything when she goes to the frigid North sect." Yi Xian looked at the little girl. "I'm giving it to my sister." The little girl interrupted Yi Xian. "If you're giving her something good, can't you give her something good? I'll be embarrassed if she brings all the rubbish in your storage ring to the frigid North sect." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Damn it, there are all supreme-grade spiritual artifacts in there. This is rubbish." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, old Ji said, "Keep it for yourself. You need these now, and this girl won't lack these things when she goes to the frigid North sect." Yi Ling also put the storage ring back in Yi Xian's hand. She took out a wooden figurine and waved it around. She grinned at Yi Xian. "This is enough." This wooden figurine was 80 to 90% similar to Yi Xian. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but the little girl suddenly grabbed Yi Ling's hand and was about to leave. At this time, Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Where is the frigid North sect?" The little girl glanced at Yi Xian. Clearly, she didn't want to say it. Old Ji suddenly said, "If he's in the frigid North sect, even if he's not the best, he won't be weak. If he becomes the Sword Master, or the Sword Emperor, or even higher. It's a great thing for the frigid North sect, isn't it?" The little girl fell silent. Yi Ling was now a member of the frigid North sect. In all fairness, she didn't want Yi Ling to have anything to do with Yi Xian. However, if Yi Xian became the Sword Master, the Sword Emperor, or even the Sword Immortal, it would be a super external aid for the frigid North sect. After a moment of silence, the little girl looked at Yi Xian. The frigid North sect, the frigid Northland. At this point, she sent a voice transmission to Yi Xian. "The frigid North sect doesn't forbid you from interacting with this girl, but it depends on your future achievements. If you can't become a sword master before the age of 30, don't come back. Because by then, you'll be a burden to her." With that, she pulled Yi Ling away and disappeared into the horizon. Down below, Yi Xian was stunned. The next moment, he shouted angrily at the sky, "Girl, wait for me. I'll come find you." "Wait for me," a weak voice came from the distant horizon. "Brother." Yi Xian stared blankly at the sky for a long time. Finally, he retracted his gaze and lay down on the ground. He looked at the sky, his eyes somewhat hollow. Mo Yunqi hesitated and wanted to comfort him, but was stopped by Old Ji. Old Ji said, "Let him think for himself." Think for himself. There were many times in life when there were obstacles. These obstacles could be overcome as long as one guessed it. Before long, Yi Xian suddenly sat up and clenched his fists. "I want to become the Sword Master. No, I want to become the Sword Emperor. No, I want to become the Sword Immortal. I want to become the Sword Immortal. Sword Immortal." If he were the sword immortal, would Kuraki Academy dare to bully him? If he were the sword immortal, would his sister, Yi Ling, be bullied again and again? If he were the sword immortal, weakness was the original sin. If he didn't have strength, it would be difficult to protect family, friendship, and love. Reality was cruel. If he didn't want reality to be cruel, he could only become stronger. At this point, Yi Xian instantly felt his mind clear. Goal. This time, he had a real goal for himself. To become a sword immortal. At this moment, the Lingxiu sword within Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled violently. Immediately after, the Lingxiu sword shot into the sky from Yi Xian's body. Everyone was stunned when they saw this. The Lingxiu sword above Yi Xian's head trembled violently. At this moment, the Lingxiu sword gave everyone a strange feeling. It was extremely strange. Not far away, old Ji glanced at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. He was about to speak when the ground suddenly trembled. Very quickly, the surroundings actually warped. Old Ji frowned slightly when he saw this. This mystic realm is about to disappear. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand and everyone vanished on the spot. Outside the mystic realm, Old Ji and the others landed on the ground. Suddenly, Old Ji turned to look. One person was missing. Yi Xian was missing. Old Ji suddenly turned to look at the mystic realm. However, it had already vanished. He was about to attack when a voice silently entered Old Ji's mind. A moment later, Old Ji said softly, "It's him." Yi Xian suddenly felt dizzy and extremely heavy as if his head was filled with lead. After an unknown period of time, this feeling gradually disappeared. Yi Xian shook his head with all his might and opened his eyes. At this moment, he was in a cave. A middle-aged man sat cross-legged before him. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and looked very refined. However, this was an illusion and not a physical body. Yi Xian looked around and then looked at the middle-aged man. "Senior?" The middle-aged man opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and smiled. A dual cultivator of the sword and martial arts, and a hidden realm. This hidden realm is also different from ordinary hidden realms. Most importantly, you don't have a dantian, but your battle strength is not weak at all. Especially your sword intent. I have seen some swordsmen and know of Dao Yi's sword intent, but I have never seen a sword intent like yours. It really shocked me. Yi Xian looked a little wary. The middle-aged man smiled. "Don't worry, I have no ill intentions towards you. I'm just a little curious about your master. I wonder if you can tell me his name?" Yi Xian shook his head. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. "Fine, I won't force it." As he said that, he sized up Yi Xian. "You can be said to be a triple cultivator of martial arts, body, and sword. I'm not good at body and sword, but I know a thing or two about martial arts. If the person behind you doesn't mind, I can give you some pointers in martial arts and Dao Yi." Yi Xian was stunned and then quickly said, "Of course I don't mind." "But, why?" The middle-aged man smiled. "If my Ning country is in trouble in the future, please do your best to help." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "You are from the Ning country?" The middle-aged man nodded. "Is there a problem?" Yi Xian nodded. "No problem." The middle-aged man smiled. "I will teach you a move. Battle intent condensation." As his voice fell, he opened his right hand. The next moment, a monstrous battle intent appeared in his palm. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. "Although you have battle intent, it isn't strong. The reason is because the battle intent in your heart isn't strong enough. At the end of the day, battle intent is the word battle. Think about the scene when you comprehended battle intent for the first time. The scene when he comprehended battle intent for the first time? A scene appeared in Yi Xian's mind. Outside Two World City, he blocked 3,000 cavalrymen alone. At that moment, he forgot about life and death. He forgot about his sister. There was only one word in his heart and mind: battle. No matter who he was facing, no matter how many people he faced, he would fight. Fight to the death. As he thought of this, a sword suddenly flew out from his body. The next moment, an intent suddenly shook out from his elegant spirit sword. This elegant spirit sword didn't emit sword intent, but battle intent. Chapter 99. Yi Xian did not stop. Within the exquisite spirit sword, a torrential battle intent surged out endlessly. In an instant, the entire cave started to violently tremble. Battle intent? Sword intent? Actually, the two did not repel each other. On the contrary, the two were one. He was a martial artist, but he was also a swordsman. How could a swordsman not have any battle intent when facing an enemy? Sword intent was based on the sword, but the essence was man. Similarly, battle intent was based on man as its core. It could be said that both sword intent and battle intent were actually the same. There was no difference. Previously, Yi Xian had subconsciously separated the two. Just now, due to a freak combination of factors, he realized that battle intent could be integrated with the sword. Or rather, it could be integrated with sword intent. And it was a perfect integration. This was because the core of battle intent was the word battle. What was the purpose of holding the sword? It was also to fight. The core of both was the same. In the sky above Yi Xian, the spirit elegant sword vibrated violently. This sword was filled with endless battle intent as if it could fight against the entire world. At this moment, another powerful intent appeared within the spirit elegant sword. Sword intent. After the sword intent appeared, the spirit elegant sword suddenly started to spin. In an instant, waves of sword hums reverberated throughout the cave. Although the battle intent and sword intent did not integrate, they did not repel each other. Instead, they coiled around the spirit elegant sword. The two intents interacted harmoniously. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly flew into the air. He grabbed the spirit elegant sword. In an instant, the battle intent and sword intent enveloped his entire body. The two intents enveloped him harmoniously. Yi Xian closed his eyes slowly. Fight. Just like what the middle-aged man had said, what was battle intent? It was naturally the word battle. The word battle was like the momentum of a sword that determined life and death. No matter who you are, no matter how strong you are, if you want to kill me, I must fight you. No. I must slash you to death. What he lacked previously was this belief. Sword Dao belief. With one thought, the heart was clear. At the moment Yi Xian opened his eyes, the sword in his hand trembled violently. In the next moment, a sword shot into the sky, pierced through the ceiling of the cave, and then shot into the clouds. Inside the cave, a powerful aura swept out from Yi Xian. At the same time, a sudden change occurred above the cave. The floating clouds above the clouds suddenly converged towards the cave. Moreover, a rainbow that stretched across the sky appeared above the cave. The world was changing. Inside the cave, the middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. Reaching Martial Dao Grandmaster and Sword Dao Grandmaster at the same time, and even causing an anomaly in the world. Just who could have taught such a monstrous person? Martial Dao Grandmaster. Sword Dao Grandmaster. Yi Xian could be said to have reached it at the same time. However, this was not the end. A powerful strand of energy suddenly erupted from within Yi Xian. This energy was exactly the energy he devoured from the clear rank black sword earlier. Earlier, he hadn't dared to improve it, and he'd forcefully suppressed it. But now, he didn't have to suppress it any longer. Or it should be said that he couldn't suppress it any longer. A clear rank sword. How terrifying was that energy? In an instant, Yi Xian's entire body started trembling violently. The middle-aged man frowned slightly. Could it be that he's going to break through again? Do you have to provoke me like this? Even though he was a genius, or it should be said that he was a monstrous genius, a super monstrous genius, when compared to Yi Xian who stood before him, he suddenly realized that he was just a so-so when he was young. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's body trembled even more violently. The middle-aged man frowned slightly. Suddenly, he pressed his right hand down lightly towards Yi Xian from afar. In an instant, the violent energy that emanated from Yi Xian instantly surged back into his body and was suppressed. Yi Xian's body gradually calmed down, and then he started to madly devour the energy. Just like this, after an unknown period of time, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Bang! A terrifying aura suddenly swept out from his body. He hadn't attained the Nether Passage realm. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian. You could have attained the Nether Passage realm, so why did you forcefully suppress it? Yi Xian shook his head. I was too impatient. The middle-aged man's eyes had a trace of astonishment. He sized up Yi Xian and smiled. Why do you say that? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I've just attained the high rank not long ago, so if I were to forcefully charge into the Nether Passage realm now, it would feel slightly superficial and unreal. The middle-aged man sighed lightly. A young boy that's able to be so calm and collected is truly rare. You're right. If you were to charge into the Nether Passage realm now, your cultivation would be greatly exaggerated because you haven't completely grasped the high rank. It wouldn't matter if you were an ordinary person, but you're different. Your foundation is truly too good, so it's best to build a solid foundation for every realm. This will be extremely beneficial to you in the future. Yi Xian bowed slightly to the middle-aged man. Thank you for your guidance, senior. The middle-aged man smiled. Actually, your current state isn't any different from the Nether Passage realm. It can be said that in terms of cultivation, you're already at the Nether Passage realm. If you attain the Nether Passage realm in the future, very few people in the same realm would be able to compare to you. When he spoke up to here, he paused slightly before he continued. As for the martial Dao, you already know how to condense battle intent, and you know how to maximize the might of battle intent. I don't have anything else to teach you. After all, you don't have a dantian, so you're unable to learn some other martial techniques from me. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Senior, please give me some guidance in any aspect. The middle-aged man glanced at the youth, and he pondered for a moment before he said, No matter if you're a swordsman or a martial artist, you must remember to never lose your heart. As for what a heart is, I personally understand it to be the truest thoughts in your heart. People tend to have some thoughts and ambitions that they never had before as their strength increases. Some of these thoughts and ambitions are good, but some are bad. For example, if a poor man suddenly becomes rich, it's very likely that he'll abandon his wife and children because he can choose more beautiful women. When he spoke up to here, he glanced at Yi Xian. It's best to have a ruler in one's heart, so that one can measure others as well as measure oneself. Yi Xian bowed deeply to the middle-aged man. Junior will remember. The middle-aged man smiled. One last word. Your talent is not bad, and your comprehension is excellent. On the path of cultivation, you have many advantages, but these advantages can also turn into disadvantages. If a person was used to having everything go his way, then one day he would suddenly go down a wrong path. It was very likely that he would lose his way and go astray. You swordsmen pay attention to understanding your heart, but if you can't, don't be anxious. There are many things that can be rushed, but there are also many things that can't be rushed. Many times, it's best to take things step by step. Yi Xian bowed deeply again. Junior will remember. The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment. Then, he waved his right hand. Not far from his right, a golden box suddenly flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man with a puzzled expression. The middle-aged man smiled and said, Open it. Yi Xian opened the box. Inside the box was a dragon-shaped token, and on the back of the token were two golden words, Kingdom Scholar. Kingdom Scholar? Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "This is a symbol of status in the Ning country. Although you aren't from the Ning country, it doesn't matter. In the future, if you walk around the Ning country, you can use this token to travel unimpeded. In addition, this token also has some other uses. Inside this token is a small array called the Dragon Gathering Array. This array can gather dragon chi. In the future, if you fight against an enemy, as long as you have enough top-grade spirit stones, you can activate this array and obtain a trace of dragon chi. This trace of dragon chi can greatly increase your physical strength and physique. It should be of great help to you right now." Hearing this, Yi Xian quickly put away the token. "Thank you, senior." The middle-aged man smiled. "Since you entered my secret realm today, it can be said that we are fated. Since we are fated, I will naturally leave a favor behind. Young man, I hope we can meet again in the future." After saying this, his body gradually turned illusory. Before long, the middle-aged man completely disappeared from the scene. Yi Xian looked at the 2 golden boxes not far from the middle-aged man. Yi Xian didn't take them. Instead, he turned around and left. People shouldn't be greedy. Since the middle-aged man didn't give him the remaining 2 boxes, he naturally wouldn't take them by force. Not long after Yi Xian turned around and left, the middle-aged man suddenly appeared again. He looked at the 2 golden boxes beside him and shook his head with a smile. "A good seedling. Unfortunately, he isn't from my Ning country. What a pity." As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man vanished completely. As soon as Yi Xian walked out of the cave, the world before his eyes spun, and it didn't take long for his vision to become blurry. It wasn't long before he vanished on the spot. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian opened his eyes slowly, and he was already outside the secret realm when he opened his eyes. Moreover, Old Man Ji, Jiang Jiu, and the others weren't too far away from him. Jiang Jiu and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw Yi Xian. Mo Yunqi walked over to Yi Xian, and then he sized up Yi Xian and said, "I thought you'd gone missing." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I was delayed by something. Sorry for making everyone wait." Meanwhile, Jiang Jiu walked over to Yi Xian, and she sized up Yi Xian before she said, "Since you're fine, then I'll be leaving." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. But in next to no time, she suddenly turned around to look at Yi Xian after taking a few steps, and she said with slight anger, "Don't you know how to send me off?" Yi Xian was speechless. Mo Yunqi and the others roared with laughter at the side. After a short moment, Yi Xian sent Jiang Jiu off slowly towards the distance. Jiang Jiu said in a light voice, "Those people will definitely not let the matter go. If you return to the imperial capital, then it'll absolutely be a dead end for you." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "That's what I have to face." Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian and said, "I might not be able to help you anymore because it's already beyond my ability." Yi Xian turned around to look at Jiang Jiu, and then he grinned. "Little Jiu, you've already helped me a lot. Don't get involved again. It's not good for you, and it's even worse for the Jiang Kingdom's imperial family." Jiang Jiu just looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak, but right at this moment, she suddenly walked over to Yi Xian, and then helped Yi Xian tidy up the clothes on his chest. "Remember, live well. You must live well. You must." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. She left very quickly and anxiously, and it didn't take long for her to vanish from Yi Xian's line of sight. Yi Xian went silent for a moment, and then he suddenly turned around to look at Old Man Ji, who wasn't far away. "I want to go to Karaki Academy." Old Man Ji glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Chapter 100. Kill Karaki Academy. All of them were stunned when they heard Yi Xian. Mo Yunqi, who stood nearby Yi Xian, said softly, "Bandit Yi, are you going to counterattack?" Yi Xian nodded. "Counterattack? Mo Yinshi thought for a moment and said, Bandit Yi, we might not be able to defeat them. Bai Zai nodded. We can't. Yi Xian gazed at them. We really can't. However, will they stop attacking us if we don't attack them? Both of them fell silent. Kuraki Academy was clearly trying to annihilate Navy Wave Academy. Both academies had really come to a state where only one of them would perish. Even if Navy Wave Academy begged for mercy now, Kuraki Academy wouldn't let them off. When they thought up to here, Mo Yinshi and the others came to an understanding. Mo Yinshi nodded. Then let's do it. Yi Xian gazed at Old Man Ji, and the old man said softly, let's return to the academy first. All of them nodded. Meanwhile, the 9th floor master Zhang Yuetian suddenly appeared here. The 9th floor master glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Young friend, we meet again. Yi Xian bowed deeply to the 9th building master and Zhang Yuetian. Thank you for your secret help. The smile on the faces of the 9th building master and Zhang Yuetian became even brighter when they saw Yi Xian's reaction. What was the reason for them to stand on the side and lend a helping hand? It was naturally to rope in Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was so grateful, and that was their objective. No one wanted to help an ingrate. The 9th floor master smiled. It just so happens that all of you are returning to the imperial capital. You can take my Immortal Indulgence Pavilion's cloud ship, and it's ready. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Thank you. The 9th floor master smiled. It's just a small matter. There's no need to be so courteous. In next to no time, all of them boarded the cloud ship and returned to the imperial capital. The 9th floor master, Zhang Yuetian, and Old Man Ji personally escorted them. At a certain place, Tuoba Yen watched Yi Xian and the others leave without saying anything. Behind her, the old man said in a low voice, fortunately, my Ning Empire didn't participate in the encirclement this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid we would have lost countless geniuses. The old woman beside the old man nodded. Yi Xian and the others aren't weak, especially that Yi Xian. His strength is probably enough to fight against a god combination realm expert. Speaking up to here, she seemed to have thought of something and suddenly sneered. It is said that this person brought his younger sister to Kuraki Academy in the past, hoping to enter Kuraki Academy, but Kuraki Academy refused to let him in. Those elders of Kuraki Academy are really pigs with human heads. Such a monstrous genius was led into Azure Billow Academy just like that. I'm afraid that the hearts of those elders and teachers of Kuraki Academy are bleeding. Tuoba Yen said indifferently, extreme prosperity leads to decline. With that said, she turned to look at the distant sky. The Great Cloud Empire is corrupt internally, and the forces on the mountain are frequently emerging. Some of the surrounding countries are even gearing up for a fight. I'm afraid there won't be many peaceful days in Azure Province. Behind Tuoba Yen, the old woman nodded. Fortunately, we didn't participate in the encirclement this time. If we lost those talents in our country, it would undoubtedly be a great blow to us. Speaking up to here, she sighed in a low voice. It would be a pity if Yi Xian was a citizen of my Ning Empire. Tuoba Yen said indifferently, what's his temperament like? Does he have any regard for his country? The old woman sighed again. Your Majesty, you may not know this, but when he saw the Tang army slaughtering the people of the Jiang Kingdom in Two World City, no one in the city dared to make a move. Only he stepped forward bravely. In the end, he even dared to block thousands of Tang army cavalry by himself. The reason why the royal family of the Jiang Kingdom protects him so much is not only because of his talent, but also because of this matter. A genius, a peerless genius, who regards himself as a citizen of Jiang Empire, has regard for his country, and will defend the dignity of the country fearlessly. The imperial family of Jiang Empire naturally wants to rope him in. Tuoba Yen slowly closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, the old woman said, however, this person has killed so many monstrous geniuses this time. These people all have forces behind them, especially the Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. These two forces will definitely retaliate. Azure Province's Azure Billow Academy won't be able to protect him. However, this matter has nothing to do with my Ning Empire. Tuoba Yen suddenly opened his eyes. Pass down my order. Let the people below pay attention to the movements of Jiang Empire at all times. The old woman hesitated for a moment and then nodded, yes. Tuoba Yen turned and left. On the cloud ship. After Yi Xian and the others boarded the cloud ship, they returned to their boxes. Healing. In the secret realm, everyone had suffered varying degrees of injuries. Now, their top priority was to heal their injuries. The cloud ship was secretly guarded by the 9th Building Master, Jiang Yuetian, and Old Man Ji. Obviously, they were afraid that the Kuraki Academy would secretly attack them. Right now, Kuraki Academy was obviously driven to desperation and was willing to do anything. Somewhere, Jiang Yuetian found Old Man Ji. The old man was still drunk. Jiang Yuetian sized up Old Man Ji and said in a deep voice, "Who's behind that kid?" Old Man Ji took a sip of wine and shook his head. Jiang Yuetian smiled bitterly, "Brother Ji, you can't even tell me?" Old Man Ji shook his head again, "I don't know either." Jiang Yuetian frowned, "How can you not know?" Old Man Ji said indifferently, "I never asked, and I won't ask." He naturally knew that there was someone behind Yi Xian. Otherwise, no matter how monstrous Yi Xian was, it was impossible for him to have such achievements in Sword Dao. However, he never asked. Jiang Yuetian was silent for a moment, then said, "What are you going to do next?" "Deal with it." Now, even a fool knew that the Azure Billow Academy would face the crazy revenge of those forces. Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine, then lay down in the air and soon snored. Jiang Yuetian's face darkened when he saw this. A moment later, Jiang Yuetian turned and left. Jiang Yuetian went to look for the 9th floor master. Jiang Yuetian was about to speak, but the 9th floor master shook his head, "I don't know anything." Jiang Yuetian's expression froze, then he smiled bitterly, "Not even a little bit?" To be honest, the old man is panicking. The 9th floor master said in a low voice, "Kuraki Academy's actions are really despicable. My drunken immortal brothel is the first to despise such a despicable and shameless academy. Therefore, whether or not he has someone behind him, my drunken immortal brothel will stand on his side. In this world, there must be some justice." The corner of Jiang Yuetian's mouth twitched, "Nonsense." Inside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian swallowed a golden sore pill. The effects of the pill were excellent, and the injuries on his body were already recovering at a rapid pace. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and a golden earth word appeared between his brows. Dao Law. Through this Dao Law, he could now feel everything about the first floor of the prison pagoda, and even felt a trace of mysterious power. This seemed to be the power of the first floor of the prison pagoda. The mysterious woman had told him that he could use the first floor of the prison pagoda to fight, but it was very dangerous. Unless it was the most dangerous moment, it was best not to use it. But at this moment, when he tried to touch this power, he actually felt his heart palpitate. It was as if his body was about to be sucked dry. Yi Xian hurriedly put away the Dao Law. At this moment, his face was as white as a sheet, and cold sweat kept dripping from his forehead. Collapse. He felt like his entire body was about to collapse. Yi Xian was extremely shocked. What kind of power was that? He now knew why the mysterious woman didn't let him use the prison pagoda. He didn't have the ability to use the pagoda now, and if he tried to use it forcefully, he might really die. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and stopped thinking about that power. The more he thought about it, the more his heart palpitated. After a while, he felt a little better, and took out a small wooden figure that looked exactly like Yi Ling. Yi Ling. He gently stroked the small wooden figure in his hand, and said softly, "I wonder if the little girl will get used to it." As he spoke, his eyes gradually became determined. The wintry north sect is waiting for me in the divine central plains. I'll come very soon, and when that time comes, I'll make sure that no one dares to bully you when they hear my name." With that, he put away the small wooden figure. Work hard. Work hard. Work hard. For Yi Xian, what he needed to do now was to work hard to become stronger. Only with strength could he protect the people he wanted to protect, and only then could he pursue the person he liked. Without strength, everything else was bullshit. In the other boxes, Mo Yunqi and the others were thinking the same thing as Yi Xian. This time, they felt danger once again. A real danger. In the mystic realm this time, all of them had almost died, and even Yi Xian had almost lost his life a few times. If they didn't work hard, it wouldn't just be a near death next time, but a real death. And this time, they had also seen geniuses and monsters from other countries and places. Gap. They had to admit that there was still a gap between them and those top geniuses and monsters. Whether it was for Tsanglan Academy or for themselves, they had to work hard. Whether it was Yi Xian or Mo Yunqi and the other two, their mental states had actually changed. 2 days later, the cloud ship arrived at the imperial capital. After the cloud ship landed, Yi Xian and the other three got off. They didn't return to Tsanglan Academy, but headed straight for Kuraki Academy. Along the way, countless people followed them. Of course, most of them followed them to watch the show. Soon, the news of Yi Xian and the other three returning to the imperial capital spread like a plague. Thus, countless people headed for Kuraki Academy. Old Ji didn't follow them, but returned to Tsanglan Academy. Old Ji came to a small hall in the back mountain of Tsanglan Academy. He walked into the hall, took out 3 ink-black incense sticks, and lit them. The smoke slowly drifted away, and soon, an illusory middle-aged man appeared in the smoke. The middle-aged man looked coldly at Old Ji. Realm transmission smoke. What's the matter? Old Ji cupped his fists. Azure Province, Tsanglan Academy, Ji Yun, begs the headquarters for help. The middle-aged man suddenly frowned, and he interrupted Old Ji. Azure Province? Tsanglan Academy? Old Ji nodded. Yes. The middle-aged man sized up Old Ji. You're the one who left the headquarters and threatened to make the dean apologize, Ji Yun. Old Ji was silent. The middle-aged man sneered. You were so arrogant back then, but now you want to ask the headquarters for help? Where's your backbone? Where's the domineering attitude you had when you left the headquarters? Old Ji was silent. At this moment, the middle-aged man said coldly, You may not know, but you have been removed from the headquarters. You are no longer a student of Tsanglan Academy. As for Azure Province's Tsanglan Academy, this lord represents Tsanglan Academy to warn you. My Tsanglan Academy has never opened a branch in Azure Province, and we will not recognize your Azure Province's Tsanglan Academy. Furthermore, you are not allowed to use the words Tsanglan Academy to open a branch in Azure Province, or else, my Tsanglan Academy will not forgive you. After saying that, he disappeared. Removed. Old Ji was a little stunned. Remove my name? Begging for subscriptions, begging for tickets. Chapter 101. After an unknown amount of time, Old Man Ji walked out of the small hall. He was still drunk as usual. Imperial capital, somewhere on a street. Yi Xian and the other three quickly walked into the distance. Behind them, a large group of people followed. Moreover, more and more people were rushing over. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, Bandit Yi, if we go like this, will we come out lying down? Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi, watch me later. Mo Yunqi. Soon, the group arrived at the foot of Tsang Mountain. Behind Yi Xian's group, there were already thousands of people, and the number was still increasing. Obviously, these people were here to watch a show. Yi Xian glanced at Tsang Mountain. In the next moment, he flicked his finger and a sword directly pierced the ground in front of him. Yi Xian looked coldly at Song Mountain. Songlan Academy's student Yi Xian seeks a battle. Seek a battle. Yi Xian's voice resounded like thunder in the field. This request for battle caused the blood of many in the surroundings to boil with excitement. Because of some of Kuraki Academy's actions, it could be said that Kuraki Academy's reputation in the imperial capital was extremely bad. And when Yi Xian killed a student from the Tang Empire, this earned him the recognition of many people in the imperial capital, especially the soldiers. Therefore, many people in the imperial capital had begun to stand on Songlan Academy's side. There were even many people who wanted to join Songlan Academy. Unfortunately, Songlan Academy had no intention of recruiting them. In the field, there was no movement on Song Mountain. Seeing that there was no movement on Song Mountain, the crowd immediately began to discuss. Some were ridiculing, while others were watching coldly. How many years had it been? Kuraki Academy had never been challenged like this. How would Kuraki Academy respond? In the field, countless people looked at Song Mountain. If Kuraki Academy did not respond today, there was no doubt that Kuraki Academy would become the laughingstock of the entire imperial capital. As for Kuraki Academy's prestige and reputation, it would definitely plummet once more. This was a public slap in the face. There was no way Kuraki Academy would not respond. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian's group. The person that came was precisely Li Xiu. Li Xiu glared at Yi Xian. What are you trying to do? Yi Xian said calmly, I want a fight. As he spoke, he glanced at Li Xiu. What? No one from Kuraki Academy dares to come out and fight? Li Xiu narrowed his eyes. Yi Xian, your death is imminent, yet you still have the time to come to my Kuraki Academy? You. Cut the crap. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, your Kuraki Academy only has one answer. Are you going to fight or not? If there is no one in the younger generation. With that said, he waved his right hand and the Spirit Elegance sword flew into his hand. He pointed the Spirit Elegance sword at Li Xiu. You can come. I'll fight you one-on-one. I'll be responsible for my own life and death. Duel with Li Xiu. The surroundings were in an uproar. This Li Xiu was the vice dean of Kuraki Academy. Even though he was the weakest, his strength wasn't something that a little kid like Yi Xian could go against, right? Mo Yunqi and the others by Yi Xian's side were slightly shocked as well. Obviously, they'd never imagined that Yi Xian would publicly challenge Li Xiu. The nearby Li Xiu's expression instantly became slightly unsightly. Accept the challenge? He naturally didn't dare accept the challenge. Because he was clearly aware of what Yi Xian had done in the secret realm. The current Yi Xian absolutely had the ability to surmount a realm and kill him. If he accepted the challenge, then he would die for sure. But if he didn't accept the challenge, then it wouldn't just be him who lost face, the entire Kuraki Academy would lose face as well. A single sentence from Yi Xian had directly forced him into a hopeless situation. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at Li Xiu. To fight or not to fight? Li Xiu clenched his fists tightly, and his expression was gloomy to the extreme. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly sheathed his sword and said indifferently, from the top to the bottom of Kuraki Academy, no one has the balls. How dare you? Li Xiu suddenly shouted angrily, Yi Xian, you. Stop talking nonsense with me. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at Li Xiu angrily, just a fucking sentence. Do you dare to fight or not? If you don't dare to fight, then hurry up and *CK off. If you want to fight, then fight. What's with all the bullshit? Li Xiu stared fixedly at Yi Xian and said fiercely, since you want to fight, then the old man will accompany you. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared before Yi Xian's group of three. The person that had arrived was the dean of Kuraki Academy, Li Xuanzang. Li Xuanzang glanced at Yi Xian. What? Didn't Songlan Academy teach you how to respect your elders? Yi Xian sheathed his sword and said indifferently, what? The people of Kuraki Academy only know how to shoot their mouths, and none of them even have the ability to fight? Li Xuanzang's eyes narrowed slightly. My Kuraki Academy naturally has people. You, Yi Xian suddenly said, if you want to fight or not, then stop talking nonsense. I don't want to fight with you guys anymore. As he spoke, he looked at Imo Yinchi's group of 3, let's go. We don't want to waste time with this group of sissies. Imo Yinchi nodded seriously, what AF * King Sissy? Let's go. With that, Yi Xian's group of 4 turned around and left. Behind Yi Xian's group of 4, Li Xuanzang's face was ice cold. No one knew what he was thinking. His original plan was that if Yi Xian challenged him, he would use all his trump cards in an instant to kill Yi Xian. However, what he didn't expect was that Yi Xian didn't challenge him. Instead, he turned around and left so decisively. This person wasn't a hothead at all. He knew when to fight and when not to fight. Soon, Yi Xian's group disappeared not far away. After Yi Xian disappeared, the surrounding people also left. Soon, the foot of Tsang Mountain was quiet. Li Xuanzang turned to look at Li Xiu not far away. If you make a move, you will definitely die. Li Xiu said solemnly, I know. But Kuraki College can't be humiliated like this. Li Xuanzang said softly, Kuraki College has no face to speak of now. Li Xiu lowered his head slightly, speaking of this, he shook his head and sighed. Li Xuanzang turned to look at the direction where Yi Xian's group left. There's no need to be too concerned about the past. Next, let's see how Tsanglan College faces the revenge of those forces. He will definitely die. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Li Xiu. Tell the Tang Empire that as long as they make Yi Xian disappear from this world, our Kuraki College will help them in the future. Hearing this, Li Xiu was a little hesitant. Isn't it a little like asking a tiger for its skin with this Tang Empire? Li Xuanzang spoke indifferently, it won't be a loss to us if the Jiang Kingdom becomes the Tang Empire in the future. But if Yi Xian doesn't die, then he'll definitely destroy our Kuraki College in the future. Li Xiu nodded, I understand. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Li Xuanzang glanced coldly towards the distance, and then he turned around and vanished on the spot. In next to no time, the news of Kuraki College not daring to accept the challenge spread throughout the imperial capital. In the past, the people of the imperial capital took pride in joining Kuraki College. But now, the students of Kuraki College didn't even dare say that they were from Kuraki College. Even their friends and family didn't dare say that their friends were from Kuraki College. It was too embarrassing. It was simply too embarrassing. On the contrary, Tsanglan Academy, which had disappeared for several decades, had once again appeared before everyone's eyes. Practically everyone in the imperial capital knew the names of Yi Xian, Mo Yinchi, Bai Zai, and Ji Anji. They weren't just famous in the imperial capital, they were famous throughout the entire Jiang Kingdom. Especially Yi Xian. His current reputation was almost comparable to Enlan's from all those years ago. Tsanglan College. At night, everyone gathered in Tsanglan Hall and sat around a table. Yi Xian carried over a dozen dishes to the table. It was a sumptuous feast of fish and meat. Ji Anji licked his chopsticks and was about to start eating when Old Man Ji suddenly said, Tell everyone something. Everyone looked at Old Man Ji, and he said softly, Finish eating first. Ji Anji moved. In less than a few breaths of time, only bones were left of the fish in front of her. Mo Yinchi and Bai Zai were stunned when they saw this, and then they hurriedly started eating. If they were any slower, even the bones would be gone. Yi Xian glanced at them and shook his head with a smile, Don't worry, there's more in the kitchen. Mo Yinchi gave Yi Xian a thumbs up, Bandit Yi, the food you cook is really delicious. It's comparable to my mother's. Yi Xian, a few minutes later, the dishes on the table were swept clean. Mo Yinchi lay on the chair, patted his stomach, and then looked at Old Man Ji, Old Man Ji, speak quickly. I'm going to cultivate once you're done. Yi Xian and the other two looked at Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji took a sip of wine and said, "Now, the four of you pack your things and leave the imperial capital immediately." Yi Xian and the other three were stunned when they heard this. Old Man Ji said indifferently, "I contacted the headquarters just now, but they ignored me. In other words, we have no outside help." Mo Yinchi hesitated for a moment and said, "Old Man Ji, aren't you very good at fighting?" Old Man Ji glanced indifferently at Mo Yinchi. "I'll fight one, and you can take the rest. How about it?" Mo Yinchi, Yi Xian said in a low voice. "Old Man Ji, is it very serious?" Old Man Ji nodded, "Very serious. All four of us should flee. Split up and go wherever we go." Yi Xian frowned. "You don't want Sanglan College anymore?" Old Man Ji glanced at Yi Xian. "Our lives are important." The surroundings fell silent. Leave? No one had thought about that because they'd taken this place to be their home. Even Yi Xian was the same. Old Man Ji shook his head when he saw that Yi Xian and the other three didn't move. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions. Staying here will only be a meaningless sacrifice. Leave and cultivate properly. All of your natural talents are top-notch, and you'll have a good future. Mo Yinchi looked at Old Man Ji. "What about you, Old Man Ji? Aren't you leaving?" Old Man Ji said indifferently, "Someone has to stay behind to bring up the rear, right? Why don't you bring up the rear?" Mo Yinchi, Yi Xian was just about to speak when a shapeless pressure suddenly enveloped the entire Sanglan College. As soon as this pressure appeared, Yi Xian and the other three felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them, and they felt so heavy that they were almost unable to breathe. Chapter 102. As soon as Old Man Ji finished speaking, he suddenly flipped his right hand. Bang! An invisible pressure surged out, and in an instant, the Kanglan Palace shattered with a bang, causing countless fragments to fly all over the sky. The pressure that pressed down on Yi Xian and the others instantly disappeared without a trace, and Yi Xian and the others suddenly relaxed. In the night, moonlight poured down, and the entire land was covered in silver. Not far away from Yi Xian and the others stood an old man in a plain robe. The old man had long hair, his hands were behind his back, and his beard was so long that it almost reached his chest. Beside the old man stood a young man in his 20s, and his face was cold like a block of ice. The old man's gaze fell on Old Man Ji, peak of the myriad Dharma realm. "I never thought that there would be a powerhouse like you in the tiny Azure province." Old Man Ji glanced at the old man. "Grand Cloud Karaki Academy?" The old man nodded. "Grand Cloud Karaki Academy." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian not far away. "You must be the Yi Xian who killed my Karaki Academy's disciple, Ganshur-san, in the secret domain." Yi Xian nodded and said frankly, "That's me." The old man glanced at Yi Xian, and then said, "Your foundation is so solid, and you cultivate both the sword and martial arts. No, your physical body can also be considered as a body cultivator. Not to mention Azure Province, even in Great Cloud Realm, it is rare to see someone like you." At this point, he paused slightly, and then asked, "Before coming here, I did some research. It is said that you went to Karaki Academy that day and wanted to enter Karaki Academy, but you were rejected. Is it true?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man shook his head. "The teachers of Jiang Country's Karaki Academy are really stupid." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "Although I was used by them this time, I don't want to say anything now that it has come to this. You killed Ganshur-san. The Dalian Granary Academy will definitely avenge this." Yi Xian glanced at the youth beside the plain-robed old man. "I'll fight him one-on-one?" The plain-robed old man nodded. "However, no matter if you win or lose, you must die today." As he spoke, he glanced at Old Man Ji and the rest. "I should say that all of you must die." Hearing this, everyone came to a slight understanding. The Grand Cloud Grain Academy had obviously sent this youth here because they wanted this youth to kill Yi Xian. If this youth killed Yi Xian, then that would naturally be for the best. The Grand Cloud Grain Academy would be able to help this youth become famous this time. Moreover, the world wouldn't say that the Grand Cloud Grain Academy was bullying the weak. If the young man was defeated, then it was fine. The plain-robed old man would kill Yi Xian with a wave of his hand. In this way, Dalian Granary Academy would be able to use this to deter these powers in the Azure Prefecture. Yi Xian naturally understood the old man's intentions. He looked at Old Man Ji, and Old Man Ji said indifferently, "Fight. Fight." Yi Xian did not waste any time and directly rushed towards the youth in the distance. Since he said fight, then fight. At the instant that Yi Xian moved, the youth by the old man's side had instantly vanished on the spot. In the next moment, bang! An explosion suddenly resounded. In next to no time, two figures retreated explosively, and both Yi Xian and the youth had returned to where they stood just moments ago. They just stopped when the limestone beneath their feet instantly cracked apart. The youth by the old man's side glanced coldly at Yi Xian, and then he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. Bang! The ground beneath Yi Xian's feet suddenly cracked apart, and then a formidable force instantly blasted Yi Xian over 30 m back. Yi Xian had just stopped moving when the youth suddenly leaped up like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. The youth instantly charged over 30 m away and arrived in front of Yi Xian. In the next moment, the youth's leg suddenly smashed down towards Yi Xian. His leg actually emanated a strand of faint golden light, and a sharp sound of something tearing apart resounded. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly as he clenched his right hand into a fist, and then he smashed his fist upwards. "I'll smash your head apart with a single punch." This punch didn't just carry momentum, it carried battle intent as well. Monstrous battle intent. A single punch. Bang! The youth was blasted flying, and he smashed down in front of the old man, causing a small hole to be smashed open on the ground. The youth crawled up from the ground, wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then stared fixedly at Yi Xian. A martial Dao Grandmaster. A martial Dao Grandmaster. Everyone here was slightly shocked, including Mo Yinqi's group of 3. They knew that Yi Xian had comprehended battle intent, but comprehending battle intent didn't represent that he was a martial Dao Grandmaster. In the past, Yi Xian wasn't a martial Dao Grandmaster. Yet now, this punch of his had absolutely attained the standard of a martial Dao Grandmaster. The might of this punch was comparable to an Earth-rank martial technique. Moreover, it was such a casual punch. Yi Xian's face was emotionless as he slowly clenched his right hand. At this moment, he only wanted to fight and didn't want to waste his breath. The youth suddenly vanished on the spot in the distance. Hiss! A shadow flashed over in Yi Xian's field of vision. What swift speed! Yi Xian's face remained emotionless as he raised his hand and smashed his fist forward. Bang! The shadow was instantly blasted into pieces. At the same time, a figure smashed down by the old man's side. It was the youth. The youth immediately stood up, wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and was just about to attack again when the old man spoke abruptly, "There's no need." Besides rage, there was also unwillingness in the youth's eyes as he gazed at the old man. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and spoke indifferently, "You're not a match for him." The youth's expression was slightly ferocious, and it was obvious that he was unconvinced. He'd never suffered such a huge loss while in the same realm of cultivation. The old man glanced coldly at the youth and said, "It's not impossible to be arrogant at a young age, but if you're arrogant to the point of not knowing your own limitations, then you're an idiot. I brought you out this time because I want you to know that there's no lack of monstrous geniuses in the world." The youth was obviously slightly afraid when he saw the old man get angry, and he immediately bowed deeply before retreating behind the old man. However, his gaze had always been on Yi Xian. The old man looked at the nearby Yi Xian and said, "Old man, now you know why Jiang Kingdom's Karaki Academy stops at nothing to kill you. If a person like you becomes an enemy, then you absolutely can't be allowed to live. As soon as he finished speaking, his right hand pressed down towards Yi Xian from afar. He attacked personally. This press caused a shapeless pressure to instantly appear above Yi Xian, and it intended to crush Yi Xian into pieces. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was no fear in his eyes. He was indeed unable to defeat the person before him, but it didn't mean that he was afraid of the person before him. Fight! A powerful battle intent swept out from Yi Xian's body. However, this strand of battle intent directly shattered when facing the pressure from the plain-robed old man. The gap between the two of them was too big. This gap couldn't be made up for by any external object. At this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. In the next moment, he waved his right hand lightly, and a powerful force swept out from his sleeve like a monstrous wave. Boom! The moment the two forces came into contact, they suddenly exploded. A powerful invisible wave of air spread out in all directions, instantly shattering the surrounding ground into pieces. Old Man Ji's right hand pressed down lightly, and the wave of air directly shattered and disappeared. In the distance, the old man glanced at Old Man Ji and said, "It seems that in order to destroy Sanglan Academy, I have to get rid of you first." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. Right now, Old Man Ji was the strongest in Sanglan Academy. If Old Man Ji was killed, there was no doubt that Sanglan Academy would be destroyed in the blink of an eye. Old Man Ji's left hand lightly pushed backwards, and in an instant, Yi Xian and the others were directly pushed hundreds of feet away by a wave of force. At the same time, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian and the others' minds, "Find a chance to escape." Escape? Yi Xian glanced at Old Man Ji, who was already engaged in a battle with the old man in the plain robe. Escape at this time? In a rational situation, they should escape. However, he was very clear that they couldn't escape at all. Because he had already sensed some obscure auras in the surroundings, and it was already an inescapable trap. There was nowhere to escape. These people were here to destroy Sanglan Academy, and they were also here to kill him. They had nowhere to escape. Escape? Hide and cultivate and take revenge in the future? Those people would never agree to that. The objective of those people was to eliminate the root of the problem to prevent revenge in the future. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared not far away from Yi Xian and the others. It was Li Xuansang, and beside him was a black-robed man. Li Xuansang glanced at Old Man Ji, who was engaged in a battle not far away, then looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "You seem to have no backing. Now, you can die." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly disappeared on the spot. When he found out that those experts had come to Sanglan Academy, he immediately rushed over. Now was the best time to eliminate a great threat, so he naturally wouldn't miss this rare opportunity. In the distance, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and was about to make a move, but at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Bang! With a loud explosion, Li Xuansang returned to his original position. In front of Yi Xian was the 9th floor master of the Drunken Immortal Inn, and not far away was Jiang Yuetian. Both of them were staring coldly at Li Xuansang and Old Man Ji. Li Xuansang's face instantly turned gloomy when he saw them. 9th floor master, Jiang Yuetian, do the two of you really intend to go against my Sanglan Academy? The 9th floor master glanced coldly at Li Xuansang, and then he turned to look at Yi Xian. "My young friend, the two of us can only help you stop these two. There are at least 6 Dharma Realm experts here tonight, and they're watching from the shadows and might attack at any moment. Besides that, I believe that the Dark Dimension has definitely sent someone here. I don't know exactly where this person is." Yi Xian suddenly said, "I've already notified my master." Master? The 9th floor master was stunned when he heard this. In the next moment, he suddenly turned to look at Li Xuansang and roared with laughter, "Li Xuansang, your Sanglan Academy has committed many acts of injustice. My Immortal Inn has been unable to tolerate your actions for a long time. Today, My immortal inn will help the Jiang kingdom eliminate a great scourge like you. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged directly at Li Xuanzang. Chapter 103. Enforce justice on behalf of the heavens? Li Xuanzang spoke ferociously. What's wrong with you? As soon as he finished speaking, the ninth floor master had already charged over to him. Bang! An explosion resounded like a thunderclap, and then the two of them parted as soon as they collided. Li Xuanzang stared fixedly at the ninth floor master. Your immortal indulgence pavilion isn't a good person, yet you want to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens? Is there something wrong with your fucking head? The ninth floor master glanced coldly at Li Xuanzang. What's with all the nonsense? Just come and fight. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished once more. When he saw that the ninth floor master was determined to fight, Li Xuanzang had completely given up on the idea of negotiating. He didn't waste his breath and directly entered into battle with the ninth floor master. Bang! Bang! Not long after, a series of earth-shattering noises rang out from their surroundings. On the other side, Jiang Yuetian stared fixedly at the black-robed man in front of him. After all, he and the ninth floor master would definitely come tonight. He'd done so much earlier, and if he didn't come tonight, then everything would have been in vain. Especially Jiang Yuetian. He'd invested in Yi Xian, and if Yi Xian died, then everything would be meaningless. Not only would it be meaningless, but Kuraki Academy would even take revenge on him. The black-robed man suddenly said, he actually made you bet the entire Jiang kingdom's imperial family? Jiang Yuetian spoke indifferently. Kuraki Academy has committed numerous crimes, and they should be eliminated. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Not far away, the black-robed man also disappeared from where he stood. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yinqi and the others. All of you leave. Leave? Mo Yinqi and the others were stunned. Yi Xian glanced at them and said, the three of you leave right now. Mo Yinqi spoke in a low voice, Bandit Yi, what's the meaning of this? Yi Xian turned to look towards the distance and spoke softly, there's really no need for all of you to die here. Now, he understood the situation clearly. Zhanglan Academy's headquarters didn't care about this, and old man Ji couldn't endure so much pressure by himself. He was in a hopeless situation. Was he lost? Naturally, he was a little confused. Reality was cruel and helpless. He, Yi Xian, was ultimately not a sword immortal who could cut off all troubles with a single strike of his sword. The helplessness of the weak. Yi Xian had already experienced this before, and now, he understood it even more deeply. When you were weak, you could only resign yourself to fate. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinqi suddenly said, Bandit Yi, your words are not good enough. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinqi, and Mo Yinqi said in a low voice, if we escape at this time and leave you and old man Ji here, are we still King human? Yes, although it's useless for us to stay here, we can still die together. Let's die together. If they stayed, they would really die together. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Mo Yinqi shook his head. Zhanglan Academy is your home, and also our home. Run away, drag out an ignoble existence. Although King want to do that, I really can't bring myself to do it. Let's face it together. Don't try to persuade me. If you continue, I'm afraid I'll be tempted. Not far away, Bai Zhe glanced at Mo Yinqi. You're still considered a man. Mo Yinqi glared at Bai Zhe. What do you mean considered? I'm a man to begin with. Bai Zhe said seriously, I couldn't tell before. Mo Yinqi, at the side, Yi Xian glanced at the few people fighting in the distance, and after a moment, he slowly closed his eyes. Second floor guru. Can I have a chat? No response. Yi Xian said again, do you want to come out? At this time, a white piece of paper floated out from the second floor. On the paper, there were a few claw marks, and these claw marks formed a circle. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What did this mean? Suddenly, another piece of paper floated out from the second floor. On the paper were two circles formed by claw marks. No, Yi Xian carefully discovered that there was a slight difference between these two circles. He put the two pieces of paper together, and then discovered that the circle on the second piece of paper seemed to roll forward a little. Roll? Yi Xian was stunned. Was this King asking him to roll? Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Guru, can't we talk? From the second floor, a piece of paper floated down. On the paper, there was nothing. Yi Xian was stunned, and soon, his face darkened. There was nothing. This King meant that there was nothing to talk about. Yi Xian still wanted to say something. At this time, another two pieces of paper floated out. On the paper, there were still two circles formed by claw marks. Obviously, this was asking him to roll. Yi Xian's face twitched, not giving him any face at all. He glanced at the second floor, and he finally understood. This guy on the second floor was probably waiting for him to die. Once he died, maybe this guy on the second floor could come out. Or, he could take the opportunity to snatch the tower. Yi Xian shook his head. He was also a fool, hoping that this guy on the second floor would help him fight. It was already good enough that this guy didn't hit him. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked up, and then said, "Senior, are you there? Call for help?" Damn, at this time, he naturally had to think of a way to call for help. At this time, if he still didn't call for help, then it wasn't stubbornness, it was stupidity. Unfortunately, the mysterious woman didn't respond. Yi Xian called out a few more times, but still no response. Yi Xian sighed softly, and then left the prison pagoda. Yi Xian looked up. Not far away, there was still a fierce battle, especially between Old Man Ji and the plain-robed old man. The two of them were equally matched, and these two were also fighting the most fiercely. On the other side, the ninth-floor master of the Drunken Immortal restaurant and Jiang Yuetian's group of four were not really fighting. The four of them were restraining each other. Yi Xian retracted his gaze, and he looked around. In the darkness, there were still many people watching. None of them were weak. These people weren't stupid, they all wanted the people of Great Cloud Empire to be the vanguard, and when necessary, these people would definitely make a move. For example, when Old Man Ji was defeated. At that time, these people wouldn't have any scruples. Old Man Ji. Yi Xian looked at the distant sky, where Old Man Ji was still fighting, and said softly, "Old Mo, old by, olden. Today, perhaps everyone will really die here." Mo Yinchi sighed softly. He took out a piece of paper and a brush, and then began to write. Baizhe glanced at Mo Yinchi. "What are you doing?" Mo Yinchi glanced at Baizhe, "Writing a will." "What else can I do?" "Will." Baizhe said softly, "Who will send it to you?" Mo Yinchi stopped, and after a moment, he shook his head. "Who cares, write it first." Then, he glanced at Baizhe. "What about you?" Baizhe shook his head. "Who am I writing to?" Mo Yinchi was startled. "You don't have a family?" Baizhe shook his head again. "I was raised by wild beasts in the mountains." Raised by wild beasts. Yi Xian and Ji Anji looked at Baizhe, a little surprised. Mo Yinchi sighed softly. "Big guy, I didn't know you were so pitiful." Baizhe said calmly, "My adoptive father is the demon general. The entire Mount Mang belongs to my family." Mo Yinchi's expression froze. F***ck, boom. At this moment, there was a sudden explosion in the distant sky, and soon, the entire ground shook violently, and then, layer by layer, it collapsed. The expressions of Yi Xian and the rest changed drastically, and they all retreated. Boom. Another explosion came from the horizon, and then, two figures separated in the sky. It was Old Man Ji and the plain-robed elder. The plain-robed elder glanced at Old Man Ji. His expression was rather solemn. "No wonder Lan Academy has not fallen for so many years. With a powerhouse like you around, I'm afraid anyone who wants to touch you will have to think twice before doing so." Old Man Ji took the wine gourd from his waist and took a big gulp, and the wine flowed down the corner of his mouth. After a moment, he kept the wine gourd, and then looked down at Yi Xian and the rest below. Do you regret entering Sanglan Academy? Yi Xian shook his head. No. He did not regret joining Sanglan Academy. If not for old man Ji, he did not know what would have happened to his sister. Moreover, after coming to Sanglan Academy, he also met Mo Yunqi and the rest, and he felt very comfortable here. This was like a home. And he did not even have this feeling in the Yi family of Qingcheng. In Qingcheng, there was only coldness and benefits. But here, he experienced what it meant to be a friend. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi thought for a moment, then said, Old man Ji, I'll tell you the truth, in the beginning, I actually quite regretted it. But later, I realized that you are a good person, and here, I met Bandit Yi, big guy, and senior sister Ji. Although Bandit Yi and Bai Zai are often jealous of my handsomeness, but, alright. In the sky, old man Ji suddenly waved his hand. Stop talking. Let Bai Zai talk. Mo Yunqi was speechless. Bai Zai glanced at old man Ji and shook his head. I never regretted it. In the sky, old man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine, and a few breaths of time later, he suddenly squeezed forcefully, causing the wine gourd to shatter. After that, old man Ji's roaring laughter resounded in the sky. I never regretted it. That's enough. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at the old man in plain robes in the distance. Then let's fight. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly shook the sky. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and in the next moment, he raised his hands into the air. In an instant, the entire sky started to distort slightly. Distort all things. This was the special ability of the Dharma realm. In the sky, strands of formidable energy shook the surroundings incessantly, and this formidable energy caused the entire Mount Sanglan to tremble violently. Countless people in the surroundings were horrified, and they retreated repeatedly. When he witnessed this scene, the old man's expression changed drastically. You're going to detonate yourself. At this moment, two figures suddenly appeared on old man Ji's left and right sides. Chi. Two streams of blood spurted out from old man Ji's throat and abdomen. In the blink of an eye, the formidable energy in the sky disappeared, and then, old man Ji slowly fell from the sky. It's a peak Dharma realm assassin from the dark world. Be careful. On the other side, the 9th floor head's terrified voice came from the other side. Below, Yi Xian and the rest were stunned when they saw old man Ji falling from the sky, especially Ji Anji, who looked as if he had lost his soul. Soon, Yi Xian leaped up and caught old man Ji. Yi Xian landed steadily on the ground with old man Ji in tow, and blood flowed continuously from old man Ji's throat. Yi Xian was stunned, and he quickly reached for the golden sore pill. At this moment, old man Ji covered his throat and shook his head slightly. I can't. Yi Xian looked at old man Ji, and old man Ji looked at Yi Xian and the rest, and said softly, I can't protect you anymore. P.S. Asking for tickets, asking for subscriptions. Chapter 104. I can't protect you anymore. In an instant, tears welled up in the eyes of Yi Xian and the others. Yi Xian gripped old man Ji's hand tightly. Only now did he realize that he had long since regarded old man Ji as family. Mo Yunqi was the same. At that moment, he no longer had the slightest bit of carelessness. His face was already covered in tears. Bai Zai clenched his fists tightly. He did not cry, but his eyes had long since become misty. Ji Anji lowered his head in silence. Old man Ji's aura grew weaker and weaker. He swept his gaze over the four of them one by one. In the end, his gaze fell on Yi Xian. After I leave, you will be the dean of Sanglan Academy. Promise me that you will take good care of them. Don't let them be bullied. Yi Xian nodded and choked with sobs. All right. Old man Ji smiled faintly. This smile caused a lot of blood to seep out between his fingers that were covering his throat. He turned his head to look at the distant horizon. 2 things. First, if possible, please bring back the corpses of the students from the Shao Dao in Song Mountain. You are now the dean, so you have this responsibility. Second, I come from the Central Divine Continent's Tsang Lan Academy's headquarters. I am worthy of being a student of Tsang Lan Academy, but I have failed my master. If possible in the future, please go to the Tsang Lan Academy's headquarters on my behalf and kowtow to him 3 times on my behalf. Tell him that I will repay his kindness in my next life. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly soared into the sky. In the next moment, a powerful force directly enveloped Yi Xian and the others. In the blink of an eye, this force directly transported Yi Xian and the others to the foot of Tsang Lan Mountain. Meanwhile, Old Man Ji himself soared into the sky. In the next moment, a powerful aura swept out from his body. This force was so strong that it caused the expressions of everyone in the surroundings to change. Nearby, the plain-robed elder stared at Old Man Ji in shock. At this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly charged at the plain-robed elder. Right at this moment, 2 figures silently appeared on both sides of Old Man Ji. When he saw the 2 figures, Old Man Ji slowly closed his eyes. Take them away. In the next moment, boom! A powerful force suddenly exploded from Old Man Ji's body. This force was so strong that even Old Man Ji himself was instantly turned into a bloody mist. Self-detonation at the peak of 10,000 Arts Realm. How terrifying was that power? In the air, the 2 figures that had just appeared on Old Man Ji's left and right were instantly sent flying several hundred meters away. The plain-robed old man immediately retreated with the youth next to him. Not only him, but all the experts in the surroundings also retreated rapidly at that moment. In an instant, half of the peak of Mount Azure below was directly shaken by that force. The moment Old Man Ji chose to self-detonate, the 9th floor master and Jiang Yuetian suddenly appeared at the foot of the mountain before Yi Xian's group. The 9th floor master glanced at Yi Xian's group of 4, and then he said in a low voice, "Come, let's go to the Drunken Immortal Inn first." To the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Jiang Yuetian looked at the 9th floor master in disbelief. Bringing Yi Xian to the Drunken Immortal Inn was like bringing fire to the Drunken Immortal Inn. Was the Drunken Immortal Inn really going to bet everything on Yi Xian? Yi Xian's group of 4 was also in disbelief. The 9th floor master actually wanted them to go to the Drunken Immortal Inn. Now, the 4 of them could be said to be being pursued by more than 10 Dharma realm experts. If they went to the Drunken Immortal Inn, it was equivalent to bringing fire to the Drunken Immortal Inn. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and wanted to say something. At this moment, the 9th floor master suddenly said, "Don't waste time." As he spoke, he glanced at Jiang Yuetian, "Brother Jiang, take them and leave with me." After saying that, he waved his right hand and directly disappeared on the spot with Yi Xian and Ji Yanji. Jiang Yuetian was stunned for a moment, then he took a deep breath, "Then let's bet." After saying that, he directly disappeared on the spot with Mo Yinchi and Bai Zhe. As soon as the few of them disappeared, Li Xuanzang and a black-robed man appeared where they originally stood. Li Xuanzang stared at the few shadows in the distant sky. Is the Drunken Immortal Inn fucking crazy? He really couldn't understand it. The Drunken Immortal Inn actually dared to offend so many forces in order to protect Yi Xian and the others. Moreover, it was blatantly offending them. There were more than a dozen Dharma realm experts in the surroundings, and there were even 3 or 4 peak Dharma realm experts among them. Most importantly, there was also the Great Fortune Granary Academy and the Assassin Organization from the Dark World. These 2 forces weren't third-rate forces. The Drunken Immortal Inn actually dared to offend both of them at the same time? The black-robed man beside Li Xuanzang said in a deep voice, "He definitely has something to rely on." Rely on? Li Xuanzang said ferociously, "No matter what he's relying on, Yi Xian and the others must die today." After saying that, he glanced around. This person has reached the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm at such a young age, and he's even a Sword Dao Grandmaster. If he doesn't die, once he becomes a sword master or even a sword emperor realm swordsman in the future, I'm afraid it won't be a good thing for all of you. After a moment of silence, the plain-robed old man quickly led the young man beside him into the sky. Yi Xian must die. They were all old monsters who had lived for so many years, so they naturally understood the principle of cutting weeds and eliminating the roots. If the weeds were not eliminated, it might bring about a disaster in the future. Seeing those people move, Li Xuanzang grinned and said, "All right, today even your drunken immortal restaurant will be eradicated." After saying that, he and the black-robed man disappeared on the spot. The imperial capital tonight was destined to not be peaceful. Drunken immortal restaurant. The ninth building master and Jiang Yuetian soon brought Yi Xian and the others to the drunken immortal restaurant. The drunken immortal restaurant was located in the center of the imperial capital and had a total of 9 floors. Of course, this was only a branch of the drunken immortal restaurant in the country of Jiang. The ninth building master brought Yi Xian and the others to the 9th floor. He walked to the window and looked around. "Those who have nothing to do with this, leave quickly." His voice was like thunder as it spread out. Soon, the people around the drunken immortal restaurant fled. It should be said that there were not many people around. Almost everything within dozens of miles of the drunken immortal restaurant belonged to the drunken immortal restaurant. After clearing the people, the 9th building master suddenly shouted angrily, "Get out of the array." His voice fell. Boom! A blue light pillar suddenly shot into the sky from the 1st floor of the drunken immortal restaurant. This light pillar instantly enveloped the entire drunken immortal restaurant. At this moment, the entire drunken immortal restaurant was tightly enveloped by this blue light. Apart from that, countless tadpole-like golden runes appeared on the blue light walls. These runes were like tiny snakes that constantly swam around the drunken immortal restaurant. An array formation. In the 9th floor, Jiang Yuetian glanced at the 9th building master and said in a low voice, "This should be the drunken immortal restaurant's famous 9 spirits array." The 9th building master nodded. Jiang Yuetian said in a low voice, "Opening it once costs at least 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, and activating it once costs at least 500,000. As he said that, he took a deep look at the 9th building master. This drunken immortal restaurant really spent a lot to protect Yi Xian and the others. The 9th building master shook his head. Money is just worldly possessions. It's not worth mentioning. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinchi said softly, "This is the first time I feel that the drunken immortal restaurant is very loyal." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the 9th building master looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Little friend, when will your master arrive?" "Your master?" Everyone looked at Yi Xian. In fact, they had already guessed that Yi Xian definitely had a master behind him. After all, it was impossible for Yi Xian to learn sword principle by himself. If that was the case, then he was not a monster, but abnormal. Now that the 9th building master asked, everyone looked at Yi Xian. Curious. Especially Jiang Yuetian. He was extremely curious about who Yi Xian's master was. Who could make the drunken immortal restaurant protect Yi Xian at all costs? At this moment, the 9th building master was actually quite perturbed. No, he was very perturbed. He had taken the initiative to bring Yi Xian and the others to the drunken immortal restaurant because he wanted to provide timely help and protect Yi Xian. So long as he protected Yi Xian, not only would he be able to help the drunken immortal restaurant make friends with a sword immortal, he would also be able to make friends with Yi Xian. Then, Yi Xian's future would be limitless. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But the precondition was that Yi Xian's master had to arrive. If he couldn't, then everyone would be dead. Moreover, he would offend countless formidable powers for the drunken immortal restaurant, especially Dian Granary Academy and the Dark World. At that time, he would be a sinner of the drunken immortal restaurant. Even dying 100 times wouldn't be enough. Yi Xian was just about to speak when a powerful force suddenly blasted the drunken immortal restaurant. Bang! The entire Drunken Immortal restaurant shook violently. Everyone turned around and saw a group of people had suddenly appeared outside the Drunken Immortal restaurant. The person in the lead was the old man in a plain robe from Dian Granary Academy, and Li Xuanzang and the black-robed old man weren't too far away from the old man. Moreover, there were over 10 people standing not too far away from the three of them. All of them were actually at the Dharma realm. Over 10 Dharma realm experts. This was probably the first time such a lineup had appeared in the history of the Kingdom of Jiang. The expressions of everyone on the 9th floor turned solemn when they saw this lineup. Even the 9th building master's expression was slightly unsightly at this moment. This lineup. How could they resist it? Li Xuanzang gazed coldly at the 9th building master. Since your Drunken Immortal restaurant wants to become enemies with us, then die with us. As soon as he finished speaking, he soared into the sky and slapped his palm towards the Drunken Immortal restaurant from afar. Bang! The Drunken Immortal restaurant shook violently while traces of cracks instantly appeared on the walls of light. The 9th building master spoke fiercely, "Activate the formation." Bang! Countless dazzling beams of light suddenly shot out from the walls of light that enveloped the Drunken Immortal restaurant, and every single beam of light carried a strand of formidable force. In midair, Li Xuanzang's eyes narrowed slightly as he turned to look at the old man and the others. What are you waiting for? Let's attack together to prevent any unexpected events from occurring. The old man and the others exchanged glances, and then they vanished on the spot in the next moment. How terrifying was it when over 10 Dharma realm experts attacked at the same time. Bang! Those formidable beams of light practically vanished without a trace in an instant. At the same time, over 10 formidable forces suddenly blasted onto the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Bang! An enormous explosion suddenly resounded throughout the imperial capital. In an instant, the entire Drunken Immortal restaurant rumbled and collapsed, causing dust and rubble to shoot into the sky. But in next to no time, the rubble and dust were directly dispersed by Li Xuanzang and the others. Yi Xian and the others had just crawled up from within the ruins when two figures smashed down before them. It was the 9th building master and Jiang Yuetian. Crushed. Crushed without any suspense. In next to no time, over 10 formidable forces suddenly enveloped Yi Xian and the others. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian and the others were instantly suppressed to the ground. Not only that, but at this moment, all the bones in their bodies were cracking. Yi Xian wanted to stand up, but at this moment, Li Xuanzang suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and a formidable force instantly enveloped Yi Xian. Pooh! A mouthful of blood sprayed from Yi Xian's mouth. Li Xuanzang looked coldly at Yi Xian. I want you to understand that not joining my Karaki Academy was the greatest mistake of your life, and it wasn't my Karaki Academy's mistake. As he spoke, he glanced at Imo Yunqi and Bai Zhe who stood by Yi Xian's side, and in the next moment, his figure shook. Bang! Bai Zhe and Imo Yunqi were directly blasted hundreds of meters away, and as soon as they landed on the ground, they spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Li Xuanzang gazed at Yi Xian and laughed fiercely. You killed so many students of my Karaki Academy. Today, I'll make you watch as your friends die before you. As soon as he finished speaking, he kicked with his right foot. Bang! In the next moment, Bai Zhe, Mo Yunqi, and Ji Anji's stomachs were pierced by the 3 rocks. Yi Xian's eyes almost split apart from rage when he witnessed this scene, and he suddenly roared furiously. Bang! A strand of powerful battle intent suddenly surged out from within him. It wasn't just battle intent, there was sword intent as well. The appearance of these two intents had actually forcefully resisted Li Xuanzang's pressure. In the next moment, his figure shook, and he charged at Li Xuanzang with his sword in hand. Everyone in the surroundings had shock in their eyes when they witnessed this scene. Li Xuanzang was at the peak of the Dharma realm. However, Yi Xian was actually able to forcefully resist his pressure. The most terrifying part was that Yi Xian wasn't just a grandmaster in the martial Dao, he was a grandmaster in the sword Dao as well. A dual cultivator in the martial Dao and the sword. A monster. That was what everyone thought at this moment. There was a trace of shock in Li Xuanzang's eyes as well. There was a few realms of cultivation between him and Yi Xian, yet Yi Xian's intents were able to forcefully resist his pressure. That was truly quite terrifying. The killing intent in Li Xuanzang's eyes grew denser when he thought up to here. He felt even more fortunate that he'd chosen to stop at nothing to eliminate Yi Xian. Otherwise, based on the speed at which Yi Xian grew, he would definitely become a great enemy of Karaki Academy in the future. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had charged over to Li Xuanzang, and Li Xuanzang waved his right hand. Bang! Yi Xian was blasted over 300 m away, and he'd just descended to the ground when the ground in an area of over 100 m beneath him instantly cracked apart. Yi Xian lay on the ground while blood flowed incessantly from the corners of his mouth. Li Xuanzang walked slowly towards Yi Xian and the others. I told you that you're dead. This time, even the gods won't be able to save you. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinqi wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth as he glanced at the nearby Yi Xian. Bandit Yi. I really don't think I can make it this time. I'll make a move first. In front of Yi Xian, Li Xuanzang grinned sinisterly and said, Why? Don't you have a backer? Call him out, go on and call him out. With that said, he kicked Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian was sent flying to the ground hundreds of feet away. This time, his body was torn apart. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sat up and punched his chest, forcefully suppressing the intense discomfort in his heart. The next moment, a golden earth character appeared between his brows. At the same time, the prison pagoda in Yi Xian's body trembled slightly. Immediately after, an illusory Shao Ta appeared between his brows. But at this moment, his consciousness had actually started to blur. At this moment, the earth character between Yi Xian's brows and the illusory Shao Ta had vanished. Within his body, the prison pagoda had completely calmed down. Sigh, a sigh resounded without any warning. Li Xuanzang was stunned. In the next moment, he turned his head to look at the sky. Everyone else turned their heads to look as well. A bright moon hung in the distant sky, and beneath it stood a woman in a plain dress. Her back was facing everyone, and her long hair reached her waist. Her hands were placed behind her back, and there were two objects, one black and one white, between her fingertips. At this moment, the woman suddenly opened her right hand. Sword. In an instant, all the trees in the imperial capital shook violently, and then the leaves of those trees suddenly shot into the sky. In an instant, the entire sky above the imperial capital was covered in leaves. In the next moment, the leaves converged like rivers flowing into the ocean to form a green sword, and then it fell firmly into the woman's palm. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Meanwhile, the sword in the woman's hand suddenly vanished, and it was pressed against the center of Li Xuanzang's forehead when it appeared once more. After that, the woman's voice resounded. I'm his backer. You're not convinced? Chapter 105. Everyone in the surroundings was completely stunned. Who was Li Xuanzang? The peak of 10,000 arts realm. Not to mention Jiang country, even in the entire Qingzhou, it was one of the best. But at that moment, Li Xuanzang was subdued with a single strike. Moreover, the sword was so swift that no one in the surroundings could see it clearly. What kind of expert was this? Everyone's eyes were filled with shock as they looked at the plainly dressed woman. On the other hand, the ninth-floor master's face was filled with excitement, or rather, madness. Even though he was seriously injured, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He had won the bet. There really was someone behind Yi Xian, and it was King Sword Immortal. The ninth-floor master seemed to have thought of something. He slapped Jiang Yuetian's shoulder and said, Old Jiang, you won't regret it, right? Huh, Jiang Yuetian stared blankly at the girl in the distance. Li Xuanzang's expression was the most interesting. The moment the sword was pressed against his forehead, he didn't even have time to react. It was because he couldn't react in time. What kind of expert could achieve such a feat? At that moment, the black-robed man beside Li Xuanzang suddenly turned around and fled. He was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in the sky. But at that moment, the sword at Li Xuanzang's glabella suddenly vanished. The next moment, a bloody head suddenly fell slowly from the distant sky. Instant kill. Everyone in the surroundings was astounded to the extreme when they witnessed this scene, including Li Xuanzang. How powerful was the black-robed man? He was also in the Dharma realm. He was instantly killed just like that. It was an instant kill. Not far away, the plain-robed old man from Omura Granary Academy had an expression of disbelief as well. Under the moonlight, although the woman's face could not be seen, she was still as beautiful as a painting. She was like a goddess from the upper realm, untainted by the mortal world. The plain-robed elder stared at the plain-robed woman. You are a sword immortal. You. Right at this moment, the woman in a plain dress stretched out her hand lightly. Chi. Without any warning, the plain-robed old man's head flew into the air. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. The plain-robed old man, who was at the peak of the 10,000 techniques realm, was killed in an instant. Even the 9th floor master, who was standing not too far away, was dumbfounded. Wasn't that the peak of 10,000 arts realm? He was killed just like that. However, when he remembered that the person in front of him was a sword immortal, he felt relieved. A sword immortal. Had there ever been a sword immortal in the entire Azure State? There were experts who were not weaker than sword immortals, but there had never been a sword immortal. On the other side, the surrounding 10,000 laws realm experts were already trembling. Suddenly, a green sword flashed through the battlefield, and then... Chi. Not far away in the sky, 2 afterimages fell from the sky without any warning, and then they were nailed to the ground by 2 sword lights. These 2 people were the 2 experts from the dark world who had killed Old Man Ji earlier. At this moment, the 2 of them were nailed to the ground. They stared at the woman in the plain dress under the moonlight, their eyes filled with horror. At this moment, a Dharma realm expert suddenly stood up and bowed deeply to the woman in the plain dress. Senior, the plain-dressed woman suddenly shook her head. Don't say anything. Let me kill a few people in peace. As her voice fell, her jade-like hand gently pointed at the old man who had spoken. Chi. The old man's head flew into the air without any warning. In the next moment, the woman in a plain dress made a light gesture with her fair hand, and then the green sword flashed through the air like a butterfly flying through flowers. Hiss. 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 In practically an instant, the heads of over 10 Dharma realm experts in the surroundings had fallen to the ground. Moreover, over 10 strands of blood sprayed into the air, and it was an extremely magnificent scene. 6 people were still alive on the ground below. Besides the 9th Pavilion Master and Jiang Yuetian, there was Li Xuanzang, the 2 assassins from the Dark Dimension, and the young man from Dian Kuraki Academy that the plain-robed old man had brought here earlier. At this moment, Li Xuanzang's face was ashen. A sword immortal. He knew that there was definitely someone standing behind Yi Xian, but he'd never imagined that it would be a sword immortal standing behind Yi Xian. When he thought up to here, Li Xuanzang couldn't help but glance coldly at Yi Xian who lay on the ground nearby. At this moment, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Why didn't you say so earlier that you had a sword immortal standing behind you? If I did, then how could I have fallen to such a state? Unfortunately, he'd never thought about it. Even if Yi Xian had told him, he wouldn't have believed it. Or it should be said that no one would have believed him. A sword immortal? An existence that's practically never appeared in Pine Prefecture. Suddenly, a green sword was pressed against the center of Li Xuanzang's forehead, and then the woman's voice resounded. Didn't you want to look for me just now? Li Xuanzang stared fixedly at the woman, and then he suddenly revealed a savage smile. You can kill me, but you can't. At this moment, the green sword suddenly trembled violently. OM. Along with a sword howl, Li Xuanzang's body fell to the ground. However, his soul was being stared fixedly at by the green sword. Li Xuanzang gazed at the woman with disbelief. No. No. Separating the soul from the body. How could you possibly accomplish that? Suddenly, the woman's voice resounded. If you're still alive, then you can get up and learn a new sword technique. As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Xian, who was lying on the ground, suddenly moved, and it didn't take long for him to crawl up. Even though his entire body was covered in injuries and was in a horrible state, he still crawled up. After he crawled up, he immediately walked over to Mo Yinqi's side, and then he kicked Mo Yinqi's foot lightly. Stop playing dead. Get up. Mo Yinqi suddenly opened his eyes and gazed at Yi Xian. How did you know that I'm still alive? As soon as he spoke, blood seeped out of his mouth. Yi Xian spoke indifferently. You farted just now. Mo Yinqi was speechless. After that, Yi Xian walked over to Bai Zai and Ji Anji. Both of them weren't dead, but they were on the verge of it. Obviously, Li Xuanzang had intended to torture them just now, so he hadn't chosen to kill them. Yi Xian poured out 2 golden sour elixirs and fed them to the two. Bai Zai looked at Yi Xian and said, I want to become stronger. Yi Xian nodded. Put on your pants first. Bai Zai had been sent flying from the impact, so his pants were already tattered. It should be said that they were all gone. At this moment, it could be said that a large portion of his spring scenery was exposed. Bai Zai was speechless. Yi Xian walked in front of Ji Anji, who looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian patted Ji Anji's shoulder lightly, then he turned and walked to a spot not far away. He bowed slightly at the plain-dressed woman in the sky. In the sky, the plain-dressed woman spoke indifferently. How does it feel to be bullied? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, not good. The plain-dressed woman said calmly, but you will still be bullied in the future. Remember, if your temper is greater than your strength, then you are an idiot. If you have a temper, that's fine. For example, like me, I can chop whoever I want. With that said, the green sword suddenly flew to the side. Chi! Not far away, the head of a dark world assassin that had been nailed to the ground instantly flew into the air. Yi Xian was speechless. The plain-dressed woman spoke indifferently. Did you vent your anger? Yi Xian nodded. The plain-dressed woman said, but you don't have the strength to do so. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, I'm still young. Young? The plain-dressed woman said coldly, when I was your age, I was already invincible in the world. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman in a plain dress said, never mind. I'm afraid there won't be another outstanding person like me in the myriad of worlds in the universe. Yi Xian's face darkened. At this moment, the plain-dressed woman's right hand suddenly moved, and the green sword pressed against Li Xuanzang's soul body. This sword skill is called soul fixation. As the name implies, it targets the soul. If the opponent is a soul body, the might of your strike will increase by more than a few times. It's fine even if the opponent doesn't have a soul. Soul fixation will target his soul. Many people in the world have powerful bodies but weak souls. Soul fixation is a strike that targets their weakness. Once your sword strikes, all demons, ghosts, and spirits will be transformed into nothingness. Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. All right, I'll learn it. The plain-dressed woman nodded slightly. This sword technique is also a type of sword Dao faith. As for what kind of faith it is, comprehend it yourself. If you can comprehend it, then it's your ability. If you can't, then you have to comprehend it for me. Don't embarrass me. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the plain-dressed woman moved her hand slightly. Hiss! The green sword pierced Li Xuanzang's soul, and in an instant, Li Xuanzang completely disappeared from this world. The nearby ninth floor master and Jiang Yuetian couldn't help but shiver at this scene. She killed him like he was killing a chicken. That was a Dharma realm expert. She killed him just like that. Meanwhile, the green swords suddenly arrived above the ninth floor master and Jiang Yuetian's heads. Their expressions changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Right at this moment, Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Moss." At this moment, the mysterious woman said indifferently, "Don't worry, I'm not going to kill them." Hearing this, the ninth floor master and Jiang Yuetian immediately heaved sighs of relief. At this moment, the mysterious woman's voice sounded again. "If it weren't for the two of you, I'm afraid he wouldn't even have a corpse left. Forget it." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her finger, and 2 rays of sword light suddenly entered their bodies. Their bodies trembled violently. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman suddenly said, "These 2 rays of sword light can eliminate all the impurities within your bodies. Both of you can improve in a year at most." Both of them were stunned when they heard this, and then they knelt down on one knee at the same time. Thank you." Both of their voices were trembling. Right at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept over from afar, and it didn't take long for a black-robed old man to appear within their fields of vision. It didn't take long for the black-robed old man to appear here. He glanced at the plain-robed old man's corpse on the ground, and his expression instantly turned cold when he saw that the old man had been sliced into pieces. It didn't take long for him to turn around to look at the woman in a plain dress, and he spoke ferociously, "Who gave you the gall to kill a member of my Grand Cloud Granary Academy?" The ninth floor master and Jiang Yuetian had extremely strange expressions on their faces. After a moment of silence, the woman suddenly said, "Do I not look like an expert?" The others were speechless. Chapter 106. Hearing the woman's words, Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. After not seeing her for a while, why did this mysterious sister become a little funny? Did she change people? Not far away, the ninth building master and Jiang Yuetian looked at the black-robed old man with extremely strange expressions. Did this old man take too many fake pills? But on second thought, they were relieved. The Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki Academy was really a top force in Qingzhou. In Jiang Country, it was not a top force, but a transcendental force. In Jiang Country, they could look up to the sky. Because they looked down on this small Jiang Country from the bottom of their hearts. Even if the people in this place were strong, how strong could they be? But soon, the black-robed old man found that something was wrong. What was wrong? Because at this moment, he found that the ground was covered with corpses. And these corpses were all Dharma realm experts. Something was wrong. The black-robed old man frowned and turned to look at the youth brought by the plain-robed old man. The youth lowered his head slightly and did not dare to speak. How would he dare to speak? Just now, the plain-robed old man was killed by a sword. Seeing that the youth did not speak, the black-robed old man's expression immediately turned cold. Good for nothing. With that, he looked at the woman not far away and was about to speak. At this moment, a sword suddenly pressed against the black-robed old man's eyebrows without warning. The sword penetrated half an inch, and blood flowed out. The black-robed old man was stunned. The woman's voice rang out. "Don't say anything. Now, call for the strongest people. If they are too weak, there is no meaning in killing them. It's not fun." Everyone, the black-robed old man stared at the woman in the plain dress. "What are you, Chi?" The black-robed old man's right arm was suddenly cut off. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. The black-robed old man's face turned pale in an instant. Under the moonlight, the woman in the plain dress used her right hand to gently stroke her hair behind her ear. "You are too weak. I don't want to talk to you. Now, call for help. Call for help immediately." The black-robed old man stared at the woman in the plain dress. After a moment, he crushed a voice transmission stone. "Really call for help. Of course he had to call for help. No matter who the person in front of him was, there was only one thing he could do now, and that was to get the person above to come out and talk to the woman in the plain dress. Of course, he knew that Ayumura Kuraki Academy could be considered to have failed this time. The person in front of them was so strong that it made them feel despair. At this time, the green sword suddenly turned around and arrived in front of Yi Xian, pointing straight at Yi Xian. Everyone was puzzled. Under the moonlight, the woman in the plain dress said coldly, "Tell me, where did you go wrong?" Wrong? Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he pondered for a moment. I made a mistake by getting into trouble. Pa. The green sword suddenly hit Yi Xian's arm. In an instant, Yi Xian's arm turned red. Yi Xian gritted his teeth in pain. The woman in a plain dress said coldly, "'Cause trouble? Was that wrong? Was that wrong? If I'm wrong, then you've provoked too little. Why bother me with such a trivial matter? What are you thinking? Can't you cause a bigger trouble?" Yi Xian, everyone, the woman in the plain dress said coldly, "Continue to think about where did you go wrong." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "I'm weak, Pa." The green sword instantly hit Yi Xian's right arm. Yi Xian's entire body twitched, because the sword contained a trace of sharp sword qi. The sword qi entered his body, and it didn't just hit his arm, but his entire body and nerves. This was really F***king painful. In the air, the woman in the plain dress sneered. "Weak? You know you're weak. But this isn't your fault. These people are bullying the weak, so it's normal that you can't fight them. Continue to think about where did you go wrong." Yi Xian was silent for a long time. Finally, he raised his head and looked at the woman in the plain dress. "I'm not wrong." The woman in the plain dress didn't say anything. Yi Xian said fiercely, "These people captured my sister, so I want to kill them. They came to take revenge on me. Yes, I'm weak, I was beaten, and I admit it. But I'm not wrong. If I could do it again, I would still kill them. Yes, I'm weak, but I'll kill anyone who dares to bully my sister and friends." The woman spoke indifferently, "What if I can't?" Yi Xian said ferociously, "I will do it even if I can't do it. Even if I die standing, I won't kneel and suffer." The woman fell silent for a moment, and then she said, "Release your sword intent." Yi Xian released his sword intent when he heard this. A short while later, the woman spoke softly, "There are many types of sword intent. Do you know what it is?" Yi Xian shook his head. The woman fell silent for a moment, and then she said, "Your sword intent." At this point, she suddenly stopped. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the woman. She fell silent for a moment, and she was about to speak. However, the horizon in the distance suddenly trembled violently, and it didn't take long for a figure to appear within their fields of vision. The black-robed old man's expression instantly became slightly excited when he saw this figure. On the other hand, the 9th Pavilion Master and Jiang Yuetian had solemn expressions on their faces. Solemn. Because the person who'd arrived might be an expert at the peak of the myriad techniques realm or above. The figure in the sky suddenly said, "Who are you?" The woman glanced indifferently at the figure. "What? You're the strongest in your academy?" The figure spoke indifferently. "Shouldn't you give us an explanation for killing so many students of my academy?" Right at this moment, the green sword in front of Yi Xian suddenly shot violently towards the sky. In the distance, the illusory figure suddenly raised his hands. In the next moment, he pressed forward lightly, and the space in front of him distorted into a strange shape. However, the green sword pierced through the space and arrived in front of the illusory figure. The figure was horrified, and he swiftly pressed his right hand forward. It was like a mountain was pressing down, and the force contained within his palm was probably capable of destroying half of the imperial capital. However, the green sword tore through that force with ease, and then it pierced through the figure's palm. In the end, it arrived at the center of the figure's forehead. Bang! The figure shook violently, and then he revealed his true form. It was an emaciated old man. The old man gazed at the woman with disbelief, and he was beyond shocked in his heart. This sword had already surpassed his understanding. The woman spoke indifferently. Explain? You want an explanation? My explanation is that I haven't had my fill of killing them, and I want to kill a few more. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly tapped downwards with her left hand. Hiss! A ray of light pierced through the center of the black-robed old man's forehead. The old man's figure crashed to the ground. The old man's pupils constricted slightly when he witnessed this scene, and he stared fixedly at the woman. Are you from the central continent? Meanwhile, a ray of light flashed. Hiss! The old man's entire right arm instantly flew into the air. Under the moonlight, the woman had her left hand behind her back while her right hand held a strand of beautiful hair by her ear. Cut the crap. Continue calling for reinforcements, and then allow me to kill in peace. The ninth floor master laughed bitterly. He was naturally aware of what had happened to Yi Xian on the Cloud Vessel and the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion all those years ago, and he knew about Dao Yi. He could imagine how helpless and despairing the third floor master and the others felt when they faced this woman. She's clearly saying that I'm stronger than you, and I intend to bully you until you die. The black-robed old man's expression was unsightly to the extreme. Call for reinforcements? Are you asking me to give my life away? I've failed. I've really failed. Not only have I failed, I've even suffered heavy losses. Right at this moment, the woman suddenly said, Where's that academy of yours? Where's the academy? The old man's expression instantly changed when he heard this. The woman spoke indifferently beneath the moonlight, Point me in a direction. Meanwhile, the ninth floor master hurriedly pointed to the right, Senior, it's over there. The woman nodded slightly. The old man was about to speak when the green sword suddenly pierced through the center of his forehead. Hiss! Blood sprayed. A moment later, the woman closed her eyes slowly, and then she pressed the fingers of her right hand together and pointed lightly towards the right. Go! A sword howl resounded through the sky. Under everyone's gaze, the green sword disappeared into the distant horizon along with the skinny old man's head. The sword carried the old man's head all the way. The distant Great Cloud Empire. The Great Cloud Empire was the largest empire in Pine Prefecture, and it occupied almost a third of the prefecture's territory. The territory it occupied was called the Great Cloud Territory. Besides the Great Cloud Empire, there were many other formidable powers and clans in the Great Cloud Territory, and Kuraki Academy was one of them. The Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki Academy could be said to be the strongest academy in Pine Prefecture. On this night, the tranquility of the Great Cloud Territory was suddenly broken by a sword light. The sword light pierced through the Great Cloud Territory like a shooting star and arrived at the imperial capital of the Great Cloud Empire. At this moment, the entire Great Cloud Empire was shocked. Countless experts raised their heads to look at the sword light, their eyes filled with shock. A sword immortal. A sword immortal. At this moment, almost all the experts in the Great Cloud Empire were seething with excitement. A real sword immortal. Under the gazes of countless people, the sword carried the old man's head to a tall mountain, and Kuraki Academy was located on this mountain. When the sword arrived, everyone in Kuraki Academy was shocked, and they looked up at it. Some of the experts of Kuraki Academy acted as if they were facing a formidable enemy, but none of them dared to stop it. In the end, the sword and the head were nailed to the top of the highest hall of Kuraki Academy. In an instant, the entire mountain shook violently as if an earthquake was happening. At this moment, a voice resounded in the sky above Kuraki Academy. If Kuraki Academy isn't satisfied, then feel free to seek revenge. I'm invincible, so do as you wish. Everyone was speechless. P.S. Yesterday, many readers said that I was deliberately keeping them in suspense. In fact, that's not the case. I just want to write every chapter well so that every chapter is meaningful, so that you will feel that the money you spent to read my book is worth it. That's all. Chapter 107. I am invincible, you can do as you wish. The entire Kuraki College was dead silent. Everyone was looking at the sword. They all recognized the head on the sword. It was the head of one of Kuraki Academy's guardian elders. In Kuraki College, his strength was definitely in the top 5. But at this moment, his head was nailed there. Kuraki College had offended a sword immortal? Not only were the Kuraki College students dumbfounded, but the entire Great Cloud Empire was also dumbfounded. Sword immortal. This was the first time a sword immortal appeared in Qingzhou, but it was because of Kuraki College. What did Kuraki College do? At this moment, countless people were undoubtedly very curious. Qingzhou, country of Jiang. Under the moonlight, the plain-dressed woman's dress looked even more spotless. Her back was still facing the crowd, so no one could see her face. The plain-dressed woman pointed to the far right side of the sky. That sword, you have half a year to get it back for me. If you can't, I will break your legs. With that, the plain-dressed woman disappeared under the moonlight. She left. Ninth floor master and Jiang Yuetian looked at each other, then at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Yi Xian walked in front of the two and bowed deeply. Thank you for tonight. If not for their help, they would have been long dead. As for the mysterious woman, she must have been alarmed when he forcefully activated the prison pagoda. Seeing Yi Xian express his gratitude so respectfully, ninth floor master felt very comfortable. The worst thing to do when helping others was to help an ingrate. Ninth floor master lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. Young friend, the two of us should be the ones thanking you. With your master's help, the two of us will be able to reach the next level in half a year. To us, this is undoubtedly a grace of rebirth. If there were no other opportunities, they would not have been able to improve further. But now, with the mysterious woman's help, they could once again break through. To them, this was truly a grace of rebirth. Jiang Yuetian nodded and looked at Yi Xian. What do you plan to do next? If not, you can come to the palace to recuperate for a period of time. Since you and Little Ninth are friends, you will have a companion. Roping them in. The ninth floor master glanced at Jiang Yuetian and hurriedly said, You can come to my Drunken Immortal Inn. If you're willing, I'm willing to bring you to the Central Plains. My Drunken Immortal Inn will definitely treat you as an esteemed guest. Naturally, he also wanted to rope them in. This was not entirely because of the mysterious woman behind Yi Xian, but because Yi Xian himself was not bad. Furthermore, with a sword immortal nurturing him, how bad could he be in the future? Yi Xian was still young and would encounter difficulties. If he didn't help him now, he wouldn't have the chance to help him in the future. Yi Xian glanced at the two of them and shook his head. I appreciate the two seniors' kind intentions. Next, I want to rebuild Azure Billow Academy. Rebuild Sanglan Academy. Jiang Yuetian and the ninth floor head looked at each other. Both of them sighed softly and said nothing. At the side, Jianji glanced at Yi Xian, and tears flickered in his eyes. At this moment, the ninth floor head nodded. Young friend, rebuilding Azure Billow Academy will definitely require a lot of things. If you need anything, feel free to come to the Drunken Immortal Inn and let me know. I will get people to help you to the best of my ability. Jiang Yuetian nodded as well. As for the manpower, I will get the people from the Ministry of Works to help. Hearing this, Yi Xian bowed deeply to the two of them once more. Many thanks. Jiang Yuetian smiled. It's just a small matter. Young friend, there's no need to stand on ceremony with us. You're treating us like outsiders. The ninth floor head nodded. Exactly, there's no need to stand on ceremony with us. Yi Xian nodded. Seniors, I still have many things to deal with, so I'll be taking my leave. As soon as he finished speaking, he cupped his fists towards the two of them, and then turned to look at Imo Yunqi and the others. Pack up the spoils, let's go. Spoils of war. There were more than 10 Dharma realm experts who died here, including several Dharma pinnacle experts and one above Dharma pinnacle expert. How could the spoils of these people be bad? Of course they wouldn't be bad. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Mo Yinchi and Bai Zhe walked to the side. Soon, everything on the ground was cleaned up by them. Jiang Yuetian and the ninth floor head didn't say anything. Although they were a little jealous, they knew very well that these things should indeed belong to Yi Xian and the others. These people were killed by that mysterious woman. Soon, Yi Xian and the others disappeared from the sight of the ninth floor head and Jiang Yuetian. The ninth floor head said softly, "This person is not impatient and is very loyal. We didn't help the wrong person this time." Jiang Yuetian nodded. Kuraki Academy was really stupid not to accept him back then. And this old man Ji, Sai, the ninth floor head said softly, "I'm afraid this matter is not over yet." Jiang Yuetian looked at the ninth floor head. The ninth floor head said solemnly, "The headquarters of Kuraki Academy is not in the Azure Province, but the Central Divine Continent. And the Dark World, their headquarters should also be in the Azure Province. This time, they suffered such a big loss, especially at the end. We don't know what that senior did. I reckon these two forces won't let this matter rest." Jiang Yuetian said solemnly, "This is a sword immortal we're talking about. Will they really offend him?" The ninth floor head shook his head. "In our eyes, a sword immortal is undoubtedly an existence that we look up to, but in a place like the Central Divine Continent, a sword immortal. I'm afraid he can't be considered a top expert. A sword immortal can't make them bow down to him." Jiang Yuetian said softly, "Let's wait and see if they will let this matter rest." The ninth floor head nodded. "Let's wait and see." Great Cloud Empire, Kuraki Academy. Kuraki Academy was located in the south of the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire. The academy was built on a mountain range. The mountain range was so huge that one couldn't see the end of it. The mountain range was shrouded in mist all year round, making it look like a paradise. This mountain range was no ordinary mountain range. There was a spirit vein under the mountain range. Although Kuraki Academy was not the headquarters of Great Cloud Empire, it was the largest academy in the Azure Province. Among all the Kuraki academies in the Azure Province, Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki Academy could be said to be the leader. Tonight was undoubtedly a great humiliation for Great Cloud Empire's Kuraki Academy. A venerable protector of Kuraki Academy had been nailed to the Great Noble Hall of Kuraki Academy. The Great Noble Hall enshrined the deans and ancestors of Kuraki Academy. It could be said to be the most sacred place in Kuraki Academy. No one went to retrieve the sword. Firstly, they didn't dare to, and secondly, some people didn't even dare to approach the sword. The sword emitted a sharp sword energy that even a myriad Dharma realm expert wouldn't dare to approach recklessly. It was undoubtedly a sword immortal. Everyone knew that Kuraki Academy had offended a sword immortal. Inside a large hall, a middle-aged man sat in the upper part of the hall. He wore an ink-white robe and held a scroll in his left hand. He exuded a scholarly aura. This person was the dean of Kuraki Academy, Mu Qingxian. On both sides of the hall stood 8 or 9 people, both men and women. All of them were at the peak of the myriad Dharma realm. After an unknown period of time, Mu Qingxian suddenly closed the scroll in his hand and said softly, "It has been confirmed that the sword immortal came from the Azure Province, and several people from our previous academy went to the Azure Province. Their goal was to kill a young man named Yi Xian in order to obtain the reward of Kuraki Academy in the state of Jiang. Unfortunately, our state of Jiang not only lost a genius, but also several myriad Dharma realm experts. Now, even a venerable protector has been killed. According to the scouts, 2 myriad Dharma realm assassins from the Dark World also went there. Both of them are dead. In addition, there are also some experts from other forces. A total of 16 people have fallen. With such strength, he is undoubtedly a sword immortal." With that, he glanced at the people in the hall. "What do you think?" There was silence in the hall. A sword immortal. That wasn't something that Kuraki Academy could afford to offend. They had to suffer this loss. Even though it was slightly embarrassing, it was undoubtedly the wisest decision. Right at this moment, an old man stood out. It's fine if he only killed. We deserve to offend a sword immortal. However, this person nailed his sword to the top of my Kuraki Academy's righteous hall. This is an insult to my Kuraki Academy, and my Kuraki Academy will become the laughingstock of the entire Qingzhou province. My Kuraki Academy's students will not be able to raise their heads in front of outsiders. When he spoke up to here, he shook his head slightly. We can't just let this matter go. We can't just let it go. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere here instantly became slightly heavy. If we can't just let it go, then does that mean we have to continue fighting? Fight a sword immortal? How? With what? Right at this moment, Mu Qingxian suddenly raised his head and looked towards the entrance of the hall. A shadow had suddenly appeared there. There was only a shadow and no one there. The expressions of everyone here changed slightly when they witnessed this scene. Because they actually hadn't noticed when the shadow had appeared. Mu Xianqing spoke indifferently. I never expected that the Master of the Dark Dimension would grace us with her presence. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. The Master of the Dark Dimension. The expressions of everyone here changed when they heard this. The Master of the Dark Dimension was absolutely a name that struck terror in the hearts of everyone in Great Cloud Realm. The leader of the #1 assassin organization in Azure Prefecture. Or it should be said that it was the one and only assassin organization in Azure Prefecture. Meanwhile, a hoarse voice suddenly resounded, Sect Master Mu, are we joining forces this time? Joining forces. Mu Xuanqing's eyes narrowed slightly. What gives you the confidence? The Master of the Dark Dimension said, it's just a sword immortal. It isn't difficult to kill him if we join forces. Mu Xianqing shook his head, you can't kill him. Even if we join forces, we still won't be able to kill him. The Master of the Dark Dimension suddenly said, someone from the Central Divine Prefecture is rushing over. Mu Xianqing frowned slightly, your Dark Dimension really dares to stake everything on this? What's your objective? Just for the sake of revenge? The Master of the Dark Dimension spoke indifferently, a sword immortal has definitely cultivated to the Golden Core realm. If we kill him, it would be equivalent to hundreds of years of bitter cultivation, right? Mu Xianqing spoke indifferently, what's the price? The Master of the Dark Dimension laughed coldly, isn't it true that riches are sought amidst danger? Mu Xianqing fell silent. Meanwhile, the Master of the Dark Dimension spoke again, it's an injured sword immortal. Mu Xuanqing's eyes narrowed slightly, why do you say that? The Master of the Dark Dimension spoke indifferently, if he wasn't injured, he would have come here a long time ago. Moreover, why would he appear in the Azure Prefecture? If it wasn't for some special reason, it would be utterly impossible for him to appear in the Azure Prefecture. So, he's definitely injured. Mu Xianqing spoke in a low voice, that's just your guess. The Master of the Dark Dimension laughed coldly, that attack of hers didn't just nail a guardian of your Kuraki Academy to death, but the reputation of your Kuraki Academy that has existed for 1,000 years. If he doesn't die, then the students of your Kuraki Academy will never be able to hold their heads up high. Mu Xianqing slowly clenched his right fist when he heard this. After a short moment, Mu Xianqing suddenly stood up, send my orders to the headquarters to kill a sword immortal. Kill a sword immortal. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.